Hello, everybody, and welcome to Book Club with Bay. I am Bay, and this is Bay. Say hi, Bay.
Hi, Bay.
And today we are talking about The Fiery Heart, which is the fourth book in the Bloodline series, which is the spin-off to Vampire Academy.
Yes.
Yes.
And a lot happened this book.
A lot happened this book. I really like this book since I know that you are better at going through the plot point by point of this book. I just took like notes of my thoughts instead of like trying to summarize the plot. I was like, she's got this.
I keep the ebook open in front of me just in that way. If we're like, what the fuck happens next? I can be like, that happens.
It is so much that happens that, like, unlike House of Night or any other like of the books that we cover, you can't really do it with these books. You just have to have the ebook open and just do it that way. But most of my notes for this book are just me like screaming and me being like, oh my God, really?
One of the reasons why I love this book is, as you can tell by how this book ends, and then the next book definitely doesn't have them as a couple. Like, they're a couple, but they're not together. And in the last book, they're together for some of it, not for all of it. They both kind of go on their own separate quests in the last book, type thing. So it's like, this is the only book where we get a good solid book of them being together while being together.
Yeah.
And I love it.
This is my favorite book so far in this series. Like, this is how a series should be, where I'm like, this was my favorite book. No, this one was my favorite book. No, this one was my favorite book. Like, that's how you should feel with a series. It's how, like, Alpha and Omega was up until Burn Bright. Then we were like, that one's at the bottom, but okay, I forgive it. Like, I forgive it, but that's fine.
It's still a good book. Burn Bright is still a good book.
It's still a good book.
But by the Mercyverse standards, it's not.
Yeah, it's really not up to snuff, but still. In any case, point being, I hardcore stand this book. I fucking love it. It was a good book, but also,
I mentioned in the last room as well. One of my favorite all-time book quotes is in this, and again, it's not about the quote itself. It's just the context and the situation. Do you want to hear it?
Yes.
He did everything to me. When she's talking to her dad at the end.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And she's like, he did everything to me. And dad's just like, because we know that she's talking about them doing fuck.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I was just like, oh, Sydney's got a hell of a backbone now. I love it.
No, it's like the character development is so, like, it has you shook it this whole time.
Like, Sydney at the beginning of this book probably wouldn't have said that to her father.
No fucking way.
Even in the exact same situation, she still wouldn't have said it to him.
Nope.
So,
no.
I loved that.
The character development is fantastic in these books. I was on board for the whole thing, and so rating, I'll let you go first.
Oh God, I just had, probably because I literally just had it, a Fry's Turkish Delight. It's one of my favorite chocolates.
I'm gonna go with cheese fries. Like, really good cheese fries.
Oh.
Like, when they're like cooked perfectly and the cheese to like bacon ratio is great, and like you get the perfect kind of ranch with it.
Yeah, and it's like, got the right amount of tang to it. Yeah.
Yep. Like the best cheese fries. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I approve.
Yeah. So, do we have any new characters to cover?
Zoe's actually in this book.
We need to talk about Zoe.
So, Zoe she's been mentioned and appeared previously. She was in the first scene of the first book. It's Sydney's little sister who is just obsessed with getting her father's approval.
Yes.
And she has joined the ranks of the alchemists, and she is now Sydney's roommate at Amberwood.
Yes. And just to cover this.
And she's a cockblock.
She serves. It's not her only plot purpose, but it's one of her primary functions is to be a cockblock. But just real quick, as always, this is Book Club with Bay, not spoiler-free book review with Bay. So, full spoilers ahead. We are going to be discussing the plot and basically everything that happens. So, yeah.
Yes.
If you don't want this spoiled, don't watch it.
Yes. And this is the first book in the Vampire Academy universe where there's split perspectives. We spend half the... And I like it. There's no mid-chapter switches. It's just chapter 1 is Adrian, chapter 2 is Sydney, chapter 3 is Adrian. So all the odd chapters are Adrian, all the even chapters are Sydney.
So my first note for this was like, under normal circumstances, I would like this guy's voice, but after liking OG Adrian, like I was at first annoyed, and like throughout the book in my head, especially with like Emily Schaefer's parts, in my brain, I just was like hearing it as normal Adrian because
she still did the right inflections and tones and everything.
But honestly, like it's less effective.
Yes, no, he's like whenever he does like has a deadpan moment, and we're in Sydney's head at that point, it just doesn't come out the same way with an American accent. Like
and it especially doesn't come out the same way with the guy's voice.
Oh God. I will say when
he doesn't capture full eight, you know, he just doesn't.
Yeah, my mum insisted I come over when she first listened to this book, and she's just like, he's the worst choice for Adrian.
Yeah, like he just doesn't like get it. You know what I mean? Like it's just not there. And then like I heard him do Neil, and I was like, where was that voice with Adrian? I'm like, so you can do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, why did you give Neil Adrian's voice? I'm upset.
I wish that they had done Emily Schaefer had done Adrian's chapters all in his accent. Except for the other people's dialogue.
I could have lived, like, I would have been so happy with that. Just because, like, I'm so used to her inflections and, like, yeah, I get it. Like, it was a choice because he's not technically British, but, like, it just works so well for the character.
Yes, and also it doesn't feel weird though as well. Because like when you look at, for example, I guess Daughters of the American Revolution, New England socialite left, like standard people, you know, that kind of wealth. They have as close to a British accent as an American accent can get.
Yeah.
It's very normal for classes. It's not just normal, it's just the standard that different classes of people have different accents. So it wasn't weird that Adrian, his mother, his aunt, his father, all that had a different accent to the other characters because they were like his aunt was the queen, she was his nephew.
I thought nothing of it.
Yeah, they were the highest rank of royal in the book until Lissa became queen, effectively.
Yeah, and so like I was like, yeah, okay. And it just worked so well for like his sarcasm. I mean, sarcasm, like it just, I mean, especially to an American, like it just doesn't come through the same. And I don't know. And the, like I said, the guy's voice I would have enjoyed
if it was anyone but Adrian.
If it was anybody but Adrian, and then I'm just like, you're not catching.
I will say though, I
essence of Adrian.
His Dimitri accent, I think, is my favorite of the Dimitri
voices. I will
in
say
the entire series. I think half of it is because he's a man. I think half of it's because he's a man.
I mean, any woman I pity. The only woman I can think of that could do Dimitri justice is Laura King.
Yes, she's very good with most accents,
and she's good with men.
Accents. Yeah.
And her male voices are just like.
One thing that I would give her as well is she managed. Have you noticed Emily Schaefer and most other younger or younger voiced female narrators have severe vocal fries on all of their male voices?
Yes.
And one thing that Adrian didn't have until this book with Emily Schaefer was a vocal fry. He didn't have one because he just had his weird accent.
Well, that's
And
because
this book, it was just vocal frying every one of Adrian's lines, and I'm like,
well,
no.
yeah, because it's always like, Alex, I love you. Because, and it's the reason why is because in an American accent, if you're a female and you have a voice like in my vocal range, which is about where Emily Schaefer's is, when you have to drop your voice, you go into here. You go into here, and your voice is just like you. But like if you're in a British accent,
it can be a little bit higher pitched.
Well, your tongue is literally sitting in a different part of your mouth.
Yeah.
British and Australian accents, and even like between the two, your tongue just sits in a different place in your mouth, and so you don't have to fry.
Well, also because in general as well, American accents are very nasally.
Yes.
Whereas like we speak from a different part of our chest, I guess.
Yes, you do. You genuinely you do, and you speak from a different part of your mouth.
And I think
and
that's
your
a big
nose.
part of why Americans struggle severely with Australian accents specifically. The only person I've ever heard do a convincing Australian accent, you go pretty good. You do go a little bit Jewy sometimes, but but in general though, like the only fake Australian accents that I've heard are from British people.
Well, usually it's easier to do accents actually if you're a trained singer. And the only reason why is because when you're trained to sing, especially like classically, you're trained to move your voice around like in your chest and in your head and like in your nose. And so you can actually like you're trained to just feel it happening, and anybody can be trained to do this. So it's just like you sat around practicing it, and so then like you just are like, oh,
again, give me a sec.
Okay.
No.
Listen
to you, damn it. Wait, I'm just gonna put it on my internal speakers.
Okay.
Let it show. Can you talk?
Yeah. I was just.
Oh.
Is it working?
But there's no sound.
Well, that's bad.
Come on. Seriously? Wait, give me a second.
Okay.
I'm going to take these fuckers out. Okay, let's see what is happening.
It wouldn't be book club if this didn't happen.
I don't know what's happening. I might duck out quickly and then come back in.
Okay, no worries. No worries at all. Yeah, so fuck, I forgot my train of thought. Hello, people. Yeah, it's just one of those things where just to do accents, your tongue has to be in a different part of your mouth. And so when a narrator is having to drop their voice, you get vocal fry, especially if it's in an American accent. And one thing that
it works now.
Yay.
Sorry.
And like, so one thing about like, you know, if you're like a trained singer, is like you know how to move your voice around. But the other thing about like Lorelei King is that because her voice is so naturally low,
yes,
she can pitch her voice up because she's a woman, so easy. You know, but she can also pitch her voice down easily
without distorting the quality.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term.
And I will say, like, the first time I started listening to Moon Called, I was like, oh my God, this is like really hard to listen to. And she's one of my favorite narrators now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's funny because I only have one guy voice, and it started when me and Dixie were watching Married at First Sight at the beginning of the year, and there was just this dopey as fuck guy on it named Dan.
Yeah.
And then we're just sitting there, and every time he would pop up on the screen, just like, my name's Dan. Words are hard. So now whenever I'm talking Stixie, I'm like, my name's Stixie. I'm a dickhead. And that's my male voice.
One thing that like
caveman.
one thing I do like is when female narrators with higher voices don't drop their voice too much. And that's one thing that Emily Schaefer does is she really doesn't try to drop too hard.
No, and she manages to. She's really good at changing her cadences depending on who she's speaking for.
And that's really how she does it. Whereas like Justine Eyre, for example, she just goes for a drop, and it's like, and that's where we get Alex. Got me. And it's like, holy shit.
Yeah, because when you really think about it, like, okay, not including durations, whatever, but she only had about 3 male voices, really. 1 for older males and 2 for younger males.
Yes.
But it's how it's her cadence that differentiates between Trey and now Adrian and Micah and Eddie. And then also on the other end, the older end, it's between Wolf and her father. It's how she's speaking. It's not the voice she's using.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I like it. But I don't like Adrian's new voice.
I don't like it either. Anyway, so the plot.
Yeah, so we start off in Adrian's head, and Sydney's reading a baby name book, sorry.
Yes, she is.
And he's just like, I'm pretty sure we have to fuck before that's a relevant book for you to be reading, right?
And she's like,
She's like she doesn't even skip a beat. She's just like, it's for my initiation. I need a magical name. And he's like, okay, righto.
Yeah, she's like, that's not why. Be quiet.
Yeah.
And then immediately I was like, oh my God, poor Adrian without his nicotine.
Yes.
The other thing that was like a little jarring, and I don't know if it's because of the male narrator, that might have been what it was, but it was a little jarring to just be like actually in his head.
I think part of it was the narrator.
I think that's really what it was. I think had I been reading it, I would have been like, oh, okay.
Yeah, or if Emily Schaefer, even if she didn't do Adrian's voice while she did it, like was reading the non-dialogue bits, but even better if it was in Adrian's voice. I don't think it would have been as jarring either, because she's been doing Adrian for 6 books by this. Oh, this is the 7th book where she's done Adrian.
Yeah.
So she knows the character pretty well.
Yeah.
Instead of just random, like, insert random guy here. Be a bipolar magic vampire dude, please. And he doesn't really get the mania, like the differences between, like when she does Adrian's dialogue and he's manic versus depressed, even those are 2 really different voices she does for him.
Yeah.
Whereas this guy, it's just like the same thing no matter his mood.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah. So Sydney is like going to this witch initiation, and Zoe is utterly a delightful human being.
Yes.
Like for the first part of the book, she's pretty insufferable because she's like
why didn't you ever spend time with me, Sydney? Why don't you love me? Spend more time with me. Why are you doing stuff? Why are you doing school? Why do you care? That's Zoe.
Yeah.
That's literally Zoe for most of this book, paraphrased.
Yeah, pretty much. Also, and this was where like I was dying to hear it in Emily Schaefer's voice, is when Adrian is teasing Zoe, and he's like, is this where he's like, oh, but we were hungry? Is this where like they go get food?
Yeah. So because okay, so let's just start off for a second. So starts off in Sydney in Adrian's apartment. Mr. Williger lets Sydney go and have her interludes with Adrian during their independent study class. And then Sydney's like, remember, you got to drive everyone to Clarence's for the feeding tonight because I got my witchy woo initiation. And he's like, cool, bro. So shit, they part ways, and then he picks them all up. And they get to Clarence's, and yeah, everyone's hungry. And they're like, where's the food? What's for dinner? I did laugh. Okay, Angeline did give me a lol moment. She's like, I liked that Indian food we had last time, although they should be more sensitive and rename it to Native American food. I'm like, wrong Indian.
Yeah. That
Poor Angeline.
I'm like, points for trying.
She did try, bless her.
Yeah. He's got the spirit. Yeah, and then they're
yes, this is where Adrian does it.
Yeah, because they're looking to Zoe, and they're like, "Yeah, Zoe, what's for dinner?" And Zoe's like,
"Sydney always organizes it. Why didn't you?"
Yeah, and Zoe's like, "I'm here to exist, not to interact with you and fucking feed you. Fuck off." And they're like, "All right." And then they're like, "Well, I guess we can feed ourselves. I never thought of doing it that way." And so they have to order pizza. And
like Zoe's just like, it's not my job. I don't know why Sydney takes care of this for you guys all the time. And Adrian's just like, maybe she figures if we're well fed, you two won't look that appetizing.
Yes.
And I was like, I'll order pizza.
And I was like, I really, really wish we had heard that Emily Schaefer style, because it would have been glorious.
Yes, this guy doesn't capture.
He doesn't capture it at all. Oh no. I hope internet didn't just yeet that. That's not good.
I accidentally backed out.
Okay, good. I was like,
my hand was on my mouse and I accidentally swiped backwards. It's a magic mouse.
Yeah.
Backwards.
Yeah. But then she gets a call and she's on the phone for a minute and Adrian sees her face and he's like, uh-oh, something's wrong with Sydney. And then she gets off the phone and he's like, what's up with Sydney? And then he's like, I shouldn't have said that out loud. And then she's like, it was my dad and my parents are getting a divorce.
It's about freaking time, Mother Sage.
And then we hop to Sydney.
Yes.
And
we're at her witchy woo initiation.
Yes. And Sydney is immediately like, oh my God, they're going to starve to death. And I was like, aw, no, they ordered pizza. It's okay. Because she was immediately like, no, they can find food. They'll eat out of the garbage. Yeah. It's fine. It's okay.
I'm just getting a phone call. Just carry on with the plot for a sec, okay?
Yeah. And she was like, they will eat out of the garbage. It's fine. And then before the whole initiation thing happens, we find, then we do the initiation thing. We find out that she named herself, I don't know what she named herself, but she named herself after a purple flower because Adrian always notes that her aura is purple. So that was cute. And then she gets this quilt that is quilted, or this cloak that is stitched by the witches from the coven. And then we do the initiation thing. And then after that, we find out that there is a witch who fought Strigoi at some point. And she also tasted bad to the Strigoi. So Sydney is immediately like, well, I would like to talk to her. I'd like to know what's up with that. And also Mr. Williger, and this was like really adorable because she was just like, I'm more proud of you than I could be proud of like any daughter. And it was just like, oh my God, my freaking heart. It was so cute. It was really cute.
Sorry.
And then
what was really cute?
This Mr. Williger in the scene where Sydney becomes part of the people.
Oh yeah.
It was really cute. But then Sydney gets a call from her mother. And we find out from Sydney's perspective that her parents are getting a divorce. And Sydney's mom is like, well, I intend to get full custody of your sister so that she can be a normal fucking child.
Yes.
And I was like, shooketh. And this is when I texted you. I was like, Sydney's mother is the bravest woman in the world. Changed my fucking mind. Holy shit. Like,
yeah.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me? You're going to publicly defy an outcome. I was like,
And not just any alchemist, Sydney's father level of alchemist. Because he's a lot.
Yeah, I was shooketh. I was like, ma'am. Sorry.
Yes.
I was like on the floor rolling around like, oh my God. And then I was also like, oh my God, no, poor Sydney. This is terrifying. Holy crap. Because she's like, my dad's going to kill my mom. He's going to have her assassinated. And I'm like, holy shit. And I was like, and her sister's going to fucking help. This is crazy. Like, that's where my brain was at.
Yeah. Did you mention Inez?
Yeah, the Strigoi killing witch.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Because she's important later.
Yes, I did.
Yep, so we had that, and then it's back to Adrian.
It is back to Adrian.
It is back to Adrian.
And then Adrian is with a Famal, and my note was like, so we're back to Adrian. My note is literally like in one line because I was typing this as it happened. I was like, Adrian, excuse me. Oh, she's a lesbian. Okay. Oh, I stand this friendship. That was just all in one, one vomit thought.
Yes. Yeah. So, Adrian and Sydney had a spirit dream, and he's like, what are you going to do about your parents? And she's like, I don't know. What am I going to do? And he's like, I don't know. Whatever you think you should do. And then they hug, and then that's pretty much it for the dream, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he's at class or meeting up with someone from class, which is the she you're talking about, but she's lesbian, so it's fine.
Yeah.
And they're working on a project.
Yeah. And we are talking about books. And you said in chat on Twitch that we were talking about Fiery Heart by Rochelle Mead.
Yes. Just in reference to the chats as well, because we've got multiple chats open, and it's just a pain to try and keep up with them when we're mid-sentence about books sometimes.
I apologize, because we also had a couple technical difficulties. I'm sorry.
Yes. I really need to actually get new headphones. I don't know if it's my headphones or my computer. I just need new of both, okay? I need a new computer and a new set of headphones just to make sure that the issues don't keep happening, because they're both hella old.
Yeah, I agree.
These headphones are 2 years old. My computer's like 5 years old. And in computer terms, that means it's like literally elderly.
Well, we do have a Streamlabs now, which is nice. Go us. We did a thing.
We probably actually need to work out a way to shill that, like, at the beginning and in the chat, I guess.
We're working on it. But
this whole thing is a work in progress, people. So they're working on doing something about the monolith from Space Odyssey.
Yes.
And Rowena, which is the lesbian.
Yes.
I guess it's not really important but that's how we described her earlier. So that she drops one of the 30-pound monolith boulder things. I don't actually fully understand what they're doing with it, but they're doing something to do with the monolith, and she drops a freaking giant cement block on her hand.
Yes, she does. And then Adrian just yeets over, and he's like, I saved you. And then he's like, forget I saved you, because I shouldn't have saved you.
Yeah, because it fell on her hand, and she's an artist, and it fell on her dominant hand as well, which meant he's like, her life is fucking fixed. He's like, oh shit, what did I do?
Yeah.
And so then we see him go into a bit of a manic phase, and then he realizes though that he's broke as fuck because he just spent most of his monthly allowance on records, boxes and boxes of records. And so then he gets depressed and gets hella drunk.
Yes. Yeah.
And he was supposed to go and pick up Hopper because Hopper, their little baby dragon that they share, Sydney took to the Witchy Woo meeting, and then she accidentally left him there because she was in a daze from divorce. So he was supposed to go pick up Hopper, and so while he's rolling drunk, Sydney walks in and she's like, "Where's Hopper?" And he's like, "Oh crap, I forgot about Hopper." And she's like, "Yeah, I know. I just got a phone call being like, when someone coming to get this dragon."
Yeah. And yeah, for anybody who just got here, this is the 4th book in the Bloodline series by Rochelle Mead, which is the spinoff to Vampire Academy.
Yes.
Yes. So
Sydney kind of just gives him an "I'm so disappointed in you" look, tips out all of his alcohol, and she's like, "I need to go." And he's like, "But I love you." And she's like, "I love you too, but you know, Zoe, so I'll see you at Clarence's tomorrow night. Bye."
yeah. She's not happy about this.
No, she's not. And which is fair because they have a deal. He's quit smoking and he's down to 1 alcoholic beverage a day. And Sydney is only allowed to have 1 cup of coffee a day. They're making each other
Sydney.
They're making each other work on their on their respective addictions. And for the most part, they're doing well until Adrian had a bipolar and got drunk.
Yeah, etc.
Because he's slow. I do love being inside Adrian's head and witnessing how he's going insane. I just wish it was in a different voice.
Yeah, exactly. I also think it's helpful to be in his head. And I'll also say this now, the way that it's done and the way that Sydney is handled is not annoying, because while she does get mad, you know what she knows, and you're aware of what she knows, and you're aware of what Adrian knows. But then once she's aware of the full context of the situation, for example, once she finds out that he's saved, what is her name?
Rowena.
Once she finds out that he saved Rowena's hand, she's like, oh, I'm a bitch.
Yeah, but she's also got very mixed emotions as well. She's like, because he's like, what was I supposed to do? Let her break it, let her. And she's like, no, you weren't supposed to do that. However, I wish you had have, but I get why you didn't. But also try, because I think it was in this that she mentioned medication.
Yes.
She's like, try going on pills to help manage your head a bit. Maybe it won't take you away from the magic. And he's like, no, I can't risk losing it. And so she understands, but she's also just deeply concerned about his own well-being.
Yeah.
Because he's not, it's one of, with the magic, and I think being in Adrian's head explains it a bit more, but we also got a sense of this with Lyssa as well. Part of it's selfish reasons. They enjoy being connected to the magic, but also they have this innate want to help people and not have their friends suffer when they can help, which I think is what most people that are slightly empathetic are like. If you've got the ability to take away someone's hurt or pain or broken hand, if you could just do that, most people would, even at the expense of themselves.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't be like, I'm going to willingly not be able to provide essentially say, because even if she'd been able to get that medically treated, it might not have saved her hand. And so he's like, but you want me to give that up? What, how am I supposed to live with that?
Yeah, she would have lost her entire live stream if I hadn't have saved her hand.
Right. So that's like where he's coming from.
And I just really love how they ended though, because he's like, oh, because she's like, you need to look after yourself better type thing, and he's like, I'll try. And she's like, I know you will. And he's like, I can be strong. And she's like, you already are. And like, she's pissed and upset and disappointed and confused and hurt and worried and all of the conflicting emotions when you see the person you love slowly going insane.
Yeah.
But the last thing she says to him, like, is for his benefit. She's like, you already are strong. And then she leaves, and then we go back to new chapter, we're in Sydney's head, and then she has a breakdown. Poor Sydney.
Yeah.
She's just really all of the concerned about Adrian, and I get why.
Yeah, I get why too.
Oh, it would be terrifying.
Yeah, it would be.
Because she knows what is in his future, and it's just it's not good. But she pulls herself together and gets back to school. She's got a new car, by the way, because the old car exploded in the last book, and also they need a bigger car now.
Yeah, because they have more family.
Yeah, and they have another family member in the form of Sydney's sister Zoe, who is also their cousin. But Neil's just, I don't know how Neil manages to get to the family dinners, like how he manages to get out of school for those, because he's just another student. He's not related to them in their cover story.
I don't know.
But I guess he behaves at school, so they're like, yeah, sure. You can go to family. Maybe it's this. Maybe he's just like, but in their religion. Maybe that's the excuse for all the family dinners, is that they're religious. They're religious dinners.
Yeah.
But she gets back to her room at school, and Zoe's there, and she's like, "Are you upset about Mom and Dad?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then Zoe's just like, "Don't worry, they won't take me away from Daddy, dearest." And Sydney's like, "I fucking hope they do." I really fucking hope they take you away from him, because he's a jerk. But then
yeah, because Zoe's like super. She's what? Is she still 15?
She's 15 or 16.
She's 15 or 16. She's already got her Lily tattoo, and Sydney is very concerned about this, and she's very concerned about, Zoe's mental state.
Yeah, I think she's 15, because she was 15 just before Christmas, and it seems like this is maybe about a month or so from where the last book ended.
Yeah.
So it's still winter.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be too much long after. So it's doubtful she's had a birthday. So she's 15.
Yeah.
So she's one of the youngest field alchemists. Or the youngest, one or the other. And we get more Zoe being a pain, because it's the next day now, and Sydney's like, I've got to go somewhere with Miss Terwilliger, because she's actually going to see Inez. But Sydney's like, oh, we're going to the library in San Diego, and Zoe's just like, why are you always hanging out with your teacher? You're fucking weird. We're here for an assignment, and you doing schoolwork isn't part of it. And Sydney's just like, it's class related. I can't help it. I can't help it. It's my independent study with her.
Yep. And she's like, what am I supposed to do about it?
And then Sydney accidentally brings it back to Daddy Dearest, where she's like, I've already studied everything else with Dad anyway. This is literally the only thing in school that interests me, because I've already done it all with Dad.
Yeah. And then Zoe's like, oh my God, right? Because he's amazing.
Yeah, you'll tell the court, right, about how Dad was an amazing educator and like how he taught us everything we know, and
And
you know
she's like,
how Mum didn't have anything to do with our education. And Cindy's like, yeah, sure, I'll tell the court that. I will indeed.
yikes.
And then she's like, but what about Clarence's tonight? And she's like, well, Eddie can take you. Like, you know, Mr. Williger's driving, so he'll have my car. And she's like, thank God. The other night, I had to sit next to Jill.
Like, next to her.
Like, at least in this one, there's enough seats where I can have, like, space. But Adrian's car, I had to, like, literally share her air. And it was horrifying. It was absolutely horrifying.
And Sydney was like, oh my God, I used to feel that way. Holy shit.
Yeah. And then Sydney's like, make sure you get food for them this time. And she's like, it's not our job. And she's like, it's our job to make sure everything goes smoothly. And these family dinners, right, is a good way for everyone to just chill out. And, you know, so get Chinese food, okay?
Because she knows that Adrian wants Chinese food, and it's cute.
And then Zoe, and then Zoe, and then we can see how much Zoe actually does love her mother in this scene as well, because she just goes, don't you ever wish you had a cooler car? And Cindy's like, since when the hell do you care about cars? And she's like, I was raised by Mum too. Remember that Jag she was fixing up? I used to go out there and sneak in it all the time, and I think Mum knew, but she never let on that she did, so I could just keep pretending I was driving it. And so like they have like a really cute thing, and so Sydney's just like trying to be like, see, Mum's not that bad. Mum's awesome. She loves us.
I really love that Sydney got her love of cars from her mom.
Yeah.
Like, that's so cute.
Yes.
You know?
Well, because it's a really cute quirk about Sydney, and it's just, I really like that, it was from Mummy.
Yeah, and not, like, because, I don't know, like, I wasn't expecting it. Usually that's, like, a dad thing.
Yeah, no, in this one, I mean, I think it's already also pretty well established that gender roles generally in urban fantasy, women that adhere to gender roles are often like, they're not necessarily looked down on explicitly, but they're always underestimated or be like, you poor thing, you're not a strong independent woman. And then those women end up actually being like some of the strongest people around. But especially in Vampire Academy or the universe in general, including Bloodlines, gender roles aren't really the strictest of the things that are important in it. And it's done in a way where, like Sydney's mum being a mechanic, it's not done in a way where it's like, see, she's breaking the barriers. Look how awesome she is. She's a mechanic. It's just no, like, she's just a mechanic.
Yeah. Well, also, it's like, oh, she was a stay-at-home mom. She did this. She did that. Also, I got my love of cars, and I was like, that's so cute. Like, and
yes, she was a part-time mechanic for Sydney's whole life. So
well, yeah, and it was like, it has the exact same effect, and I think it's honestly more effective than even the way that, like, although the way that Patricia Briggs does it does make sense in Moon Called or whatever, but in a way it's almost more effective at, like, the messaging.
Well, part of it is also just because she mainly works on VWs and her name's Mercedes. They make jokes about that, but they always make such a big deal in the Mercyverse about Mercy being a mechanic.
Yeah.
A female coyote, wife of the alpha of the Columbia
Basin pack. Yeah.
Like, everything is just like this grand thing. She's like, I am female mechanic of the German cars. my name is Mercedes and I work on VWs, and yes, I get it's funny and laugh, damn it, but I am strong. Whereas in this, it's just, yeah, mom's a mechanic.
But it's still like as much of an identifying feature, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, because she's in Mercy. It just seems more like she's a mechanic because it's her job.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, Sydney's mom loves cars, so she became a mechanic.
Yeah.
And
sorry. I'm sorry.
well, like just in Mercy as well. Like Mercy doesn't seem to love cars.
She loves being a mechanic, though.
Yeah, she loves being a mechanic, but she doesn't love cars.
Right. But like Z loves cars.
Yes. Whereas Sydney and her mum, well, a mechanic's the only natural conclusion. Like it's the inevitable outcome of Sydney's mother's love of cars.
Yeah, and like the way that it's done in Mercy, it's just done differently, and it is just. And you're right. It's because of what Mercy actually loves to do and loves about it, and like she loves being a mechanic. And yeah, so it just happens differently, and it's just interesting. It's just one of those things. Anyway.
Yeah, so they have like, a sweet memories and stuff, and Sydney's just like,
it also gives a little bit more depth to Zoe too.
Yeah, well,
and you immediately as the reader become less you're like, okay, fine.
Yeah, well, it makes Zoe a much more sympathetic character.
Exactly.
As well. There's a few scenes like that where she remembers stuff that her mum did, and Sydney's just like, see, and like just trying to gently nudge her,
Yeah.
And you can see just how much Zoe does love her mother and how much she feels loved by her mother, but she's been brainwashed by her father, and all she wants is his approval, because Carly was a lost cause to their father, and she's like, sweet, excellent, I'm out of the alchemist life, awesome, whereas Sydney, and possibly because she's the middle child, she was the perfect daughter up until she got in cahoots with Rose. And Zoe, being the youngest, she would have always been overlooked by her dad in favor of Sydney and this and that, and all she's ever wanted is daddy's love.
Right.
So
she's always had her mother's love. Like, that's never been a problem.
Yes.
But she never felt like she had her dad's attention.
Yes. So, and those scenes as well just drive that home, that Zoe's a teenage girl who wants her father to love her.
Yeah.
And I think we can all relate to that. Well, even if like not strictly that, I think we can all at least understand it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So it makes Zoe's actions in this book a bit more you can empathize with them more.
Yes, exactly. And having it happen this early in the book, anything annoying that she's done so far, you're immediately just like, all right.
Yeah, like she doesn't stop being a huffler. You don't stop wishing, like we never stop wishing she'll just fuck off and go away.
Yeah, exactly.
But you don't hate her existence.
Right. You immediately kind of stop hating her existence, which is important. So there's that.
So then Sydney meets up with Miss Terwilliger because they're going to go see Inez.
Yes.
And then Adrian shows up and he's like, hi, guess who I brought? I went and got Hopper. Yay.
Yes, he did. He was a good boy.
Yes.
The dragon is my favorite part.
I love Hopper so much.
I do too.
Oh, Hopper's going to break your heart in the next, I think it's either at the end of the next book or at the very beginning of the
Does Hopper die?
No, but he doesn't die. But by the end of the series, his year is almost up, or at least it's over halfway up.
They can't just they can't renew it.
It'll be a different one, I think, if she does it again. Because he's only around for a year and a day.
Thanks. I hate it.
All I can say is if you're going to call it Calistana, make sure that the February in your year and a day is a leap year, so you get one extra day with them. It's sad, right? Poor Hopper. But no, well, one thing you need to remember as well is at the end of the book, Hopper is a rock. So he's been a rock for the entire time period of the next book. So he's not doing too good when she brings him back to not rock. He's not doing too good. Because I think the next, like including the gap in between the books, but from the end of this book to the end of next book, I think is about 3 months.
I don't want Hopper to go away.
I will say he's not still around when the book ends, but that's because the epilogue has a time jump. Like at the end, like the series, the last part of the series is a time jump. So he's not still around at the end of the series.
Okay.
But by the end of the main story, he's still around. Okay?
Yeah.
Poor Hopper.
Poor Hopper.
He's such a good boy.
He is a good boy.
So they go to Inez's house, and there's an old car out the front with a bum tire, and she's like, okay, well that's sad. That makes me feel sad, you know. They go inside, and Inez's house is full of roses. Absolutely, just everything is like doilies and lace and rose patterns.
That made me laugh because it reminded me of the D&D. I don't know if it was supposed to, but it made me laugh.
It did a little bit.
Yeah. Real quick, I've been reading an exciting book by Named My Struggle by a fairly well-known Austrian author. What is that about? Yeah, so we're at Inez's house, and this is the witch that fought Strigoi and got bit, and her blood was yuck.
Yeah, much like Sydney's was, which is why Sydney wanted to.
Right, and we were told by Miss T that she is weird, and that she was going to be difficult.
Yeah, she's not a member of any coven. Every witch is kind of very intimidated by her, but all like they're scared of her, and she's very standoffish, and they all kind of want, like, if someone gets her approval, like they have found the Holy Grail. She's that kind of person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, it's political. Don't know if we're into that.
Yeah.
Are we into politics at all, Bae?
A little bit. We don't usually read political books, though. So this is, real quick, this is book club, and what we do is we read books and review them in their entirety. Sometimes we do one-offs, usually we do series. Right now we're on the 4th book of the Bloodline series by Rochelle Mead. So that's what we're talking about today. Yeah.
Yes. And we alternate. So like we generally do good book week and bad book week. And for bad book week, we are joined by Other Bae, aka Addie. So
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have any names up.
Well, that's rude.
I know.
I didn't even notice that.
I'm fired.
I didn't know you could take them off.
You can.
I didn't know that. Okay.
I'm fired. I'm sorry. Oh, this is good book week.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we like this book.
Yeah.
We rate books with food, and this book got cheese fries and Turkish delight. So
and we have done non-urban fantasy books, but generally the books that we do are urban fantasy.
Yeah, the next book series for Good Book Week that we're planning on doing is going to be a high fantasy series. So
yeah, and the last book club we did was high fantasy as well.
Yeah, it was.
But fantasy of all of its varieties generally kind of I like most.
Yeah, it tends to be my genre of choice as well.
But yeah, back to book.
Sorry.
So they meet Inez and Sydney's like, I want info, and she's like, what are you going to do with info, you lazy young girl who has boyfriend? Have you lost your virginity yet? Well, if you do, you will lose half your power. Don't use the box.
Yes, she's like, you're gross and awful, and Sydney's like, oh my god, what the fuck?
And then she starts lecturing this Terwilliger like, Jacqueline, how could you let this girl date? You should have locked her in a tower like my mentor locked me in a tower.
It was funny.
Children these days are lazy, and this girl means nothing to me. And Sydney's like, I'll change your tire. I will fix your tire, and you will give me info. And she's like, you have 15 minutes. And Sydney's like, I only need 10.
Yep.
She did it in 9. So Sydney goes out and fixes the tire while in a very formal pencil skirt and blouse. But she does it.
She does.
And then she goes in and she's like, I want information now, please. And she's like, okay, well, my blood tastes bad because of human magic, and Strigoi can't stomach that, so your blood would taste bad, and so would Jackie's, aka Miss Terwilliger. And she's like, oh, that explains so much. And then Sydney's like, well, what about like with vampire magic then? And she's like, oh, no, the human magic would cancel out the vampire magic. And Sydney's like, tattoo.
Yeah, and then she's like, yeah, no, your tattoo stopped working the second you started doing human magic. Bye. And she's like,
and then Sydney's mind starts going, and she realizes that or she at least makes the ultimately correct assumption that the sealing, like the indigo tattoo that Marcus's merry men seal their tattoos with, is actually bound with human magic.
Yes.
And that's why it stops any re-inking to ever be effective. So she's like, I need more information on this. And Inez is like, well, I guess if you can find them, you can have some of my books. And so Sydney had to go like just looking through this woman's attic to find these books.
She didn't make it easy.
Yeah, and then when they leave, Mr. Willig is like, she has never lent a single soul any of her spell books. Ever. You are a blessed child. You are truly blessed. So I think that's pretty much it for that chapter. Let me just see. Books.
What chapter are we on?
Oh, 4. So we need to speed it up a bit, I think. But yeah, so Sydney tells Adrian that I think I can replicate Marcus's ink. And then we're back in Adrian's head, and he's all bummed because instead of like getting to second base with Sydney, he just gets to sit by while she does research on his bed.
Yes.
And then she eventually finds, because they work out that the magic has to be bound to a mineral that is then mixed in with the ink and inked onto tattoo. She finds the correct mineral, boleite, and because it makes sense. Marcus has to go to Mexico for it. It's blue. This is found in Mexico, and it's blue. And it's got about the same kind of properties that it would need to hold the magic, I guess.
Yeah.
And so then Sydney's like, maybe I can find a different mineral that would work just as well. So that's her new goal, because she's like, I can't easily access boleite. Maybe I can find something else. And then they're taught, and then he's like, okay, well, we need to tell Marcus then. We'll dream call him tonight. And he's like, stop. It's not important for you to spirit. And he's like, no, it isn't. She goes, well, what if I surprise you? Will you not do the spirit dream if I surprise you? And he's like, how on earth could you surprise me? How? And she pulls out a chart that she made comparing birth controls. And she's like, I'm on birth control. So if and when we want to do fuck, we can. And Adrian's just like, and she's like, yeah, and I'm even risking getting fat for this. So you're welcome.
Yep. And he's like,
I think like there'd be a lot of guys as well that even if they wanted, like, you know, sleep with their significant other, they'd be weirded out by her being like, I researched birth control and I am now on it. Whereas he's just like, oh my God, the risk you're taking for our relationship. Because Sydney's, you know, very obsessed with the weight. She's gotten better, but she still doesn't want to get fat. And he's just like, don't risk weight for me. There's other ways, Sydney. There's other ways.
And she's like, no, it's fine.
It's good, okay? I'm fine with this. I'm fine with the decision I made. So what next? Oh, and then he's like, oh, so you mean we can, you know? And she's like, well, no, because there's still the Jill issue, because they're spirit bound, so Jill can see into Adrian's head, especially when his emotions are running high. She goes in Adrian's head. And I imagine doing the love of your life for the first time would be a pretty intensely high emotional moment.
Might be.
Especially when, because, okay, spoiler alert, they have sex this book. And especially the shit going through his head when they're about to start and everything. He's just like, wow, I've never actually deflowered someone before. This is a lot of pressure. So there's also that. So yeah, no, I think Jill definitely would have been, it would have been an unintentional threesome.
Just don't want.
But they find a way around that, which is good. They find a way around Jill.
Oh yeah, because he was on the medication when that happened, so she wasn't there.
Yes, and he already knew that she couldn't see these. Because the difference as well is, because Adrian does end up going on mood stabilizers in this book, because where Spirit made Lissa just straight up depressed, he's bipolar.
Yeah.
So he's on mood stabilizers, but also even if he was on antidepressants, it still might have affected him differently, because they affect everyone differently anyway. But when Lissa was on her meds, Rose could still see into her head. Like the bond wasn't at all affected. Just the rest of her magic was, whereas in this, it just completely numbs out everything spirit related.
Yeah.
So it worked. But then I think, where are we at? Oh, so Adrian and Jill are having dinner because they have regular dinners because they're super close. And Eddie normally tags along to the dinners because they need protection. But Neil came along tonight, and Adrian's cross. He doesn't like Neil, and not because of Neil himself, but because of Angeline and Jill both pretending or trying to convince themselves that they're in love with Neil. And he's just like, no, Jill, love Eddie, damn it. And Angeline, I don't give a fuck what you do. I just don't care. But Jill, you need to stop this shit.
Yeah, which is fair.
Yes. And because Neil is jealous of Eddie and Eddie is jealous of Neil, like they're both super competitive, but Eddie's jealous of Neil because of the attention that Jill pays him, but also the fact that he was assigned there because Sydney had to lie and say she didn't feel like Jill was ever safe. So he just sees Neil as a sign of him not being good enough as well. And then Neil's just like, everyone likes Eddie so much and he's done more than me. So they're both just jealous of each other. So this whole dinner, Adrian's just being like, you know, Eddie's better than you, right? You know he is. He's actually fought Strigoi. What have you done, Neil? What have you done?
Yeah.
And so Jill's getting the shits with Adrian, and he's just like, what do you want from me? It's fun. Oh, and then there's the whole bit where Neil's on the wrestling team at school and Eddie was on the basketball team. And he's just like, oh, so you won all your matches against the humans, Neil. Well done. What's it like being the equivalent of a grown man taking on a toddler girl?
Oh, God.
And he's like, what should I do? You know, what am I, the great and powerful Neil, supposed to do? And he's like, well, you could do what Eddie did and fake an injury. So he wouldn't have to, you know, compete dishonorably. And this just, Adrian can be really mean sometimes. He really can. He's a jerk and I love it.
Yeah, he is. And it's great. He's a lovable jerk.
Yes. And then Adrian and Jill are talking. He's like, I don't know what I'm gonna get for Sydney's birthday. I don't know. Like, I have no money type thing. And she's like, just cook a dinner. He's like, I can't cook. And she's like, that's why she'll love it. You know, Sydney, she likes self-improvement, so learn how to cook it one simple dish and make it for her. And she will love you forever.
Mm-hmm. Which is, yeah.
And then Jill's just like, and then maybe you guys could do bang. And he's just like, Jill, don't really want you witnessing that. And she's like, but I'll just get really drunk. It's one night, I'll get drunk, it'll numb out the bond, and you two can have some alone time.
Poor Jill.
I mean, bless her. She's like, I will risk getting expelled by getting hella drunk at
So
school.
that you can do bang. And he's like, no.
She's a bro.
You're a bro, but no.
She might be a cock block, but she's doing her best to not be.
I'm like somebody else.
Yeah. Oh, fucking Zoe. So now we're at...
In all books, we hate Zoe.
It's just the name. If you ever want to write a likable character, do not name them Zoe. Now we're in Sydney's head, and she's in a spirit dream, and she's like, I thought we said, and he's like, I never actually agreed to that.
And he's
And
right.
she's like, God damn it, you're right. You didn't. You just challenged me to surprise you. God damn it. He's like, oh, well, now that we're here, let's call
Marcus. Yeah. And then we yeet and we go get Marcus. And then Marcus is here and he's like, whoa, is this real? And they're like, yeet. And he's like, okay, what up? And she's like, I might have found a way to replicate your tats. And he's like, what? No fucking way. That's cray. And she's like, mm-hmm. And he's like, fucking how? And she's like, so here's how. And then he's like...
But she doesn't go into the magic side of it.
Yeah, no, she doesn't tell him that. And then he's like, whoa. And then she's like, can you imagine like what we could do with this? And he's like, yeah. Yes, queen. And that's kind of the end of that conversation.
Well, yeah, he's like, how much time do you need? And she's like, I don't know, a few weeks. And he's like, cool, I'll check in with you then type thing. Let me know when you do your thing.
Yep.
And like, okay, we will. So that's pretty much that. And then her and Adrian say farewells. And it's the next day now. And she's going through she goes and buys a bunch of different rocks from like a new agey store.
Yes.
I think she's with Miss Terwilliger. Yeah, she's with Miss Terwilliger. She would be. Yeah. And then they go to the coffee shop, run into Trey. And Trey's like still in love with Angeline, even though he's like, I can't. She's a damn peer. I
Yeah,
am
he's like,
warrior
no,
of
I
the
can't.
light.
My love is a thing, and I'm a thing, and we can't. And then Sydney's like, all right, bro, shut the fuck up. And so that's kind of the end of that. And then, yeah.
Oh, wait, no, sorry. She was expecting to see Trey there, but then school session courses here, and then they run into Brayden. I mean, Brayden doesn't really have much of a role in the scene.
But he has a new girlfriend.
Yep, and she just looks at him and she's like, how could I ever have thought that what we had could even be thought of as a relationship? I don't understand it.
And we're like, we know.
But it was enjoyable while it lasted for us, Sydney.
And Sydney's like, what was wrong with me? And we're like, a lot, but that's okay.
And then, so they're getting, Miss Terwilliger gets a triple cappuccino, whereas Sydney has to have peppermint tea.
And Miss Terwilliger is like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And Sydney's like, me too.
And then Malachi Wolf appears in all his glory.
I ship this so fucking hard. Okay, so what happens is this. I want to narrate this, okay? So what happens, let me set the stage, okay? The lights go down and then like a spotlight yeets over to the entrance of the coffee shop. And Malachi Wolf in all his glory.
His Bermuda shorts and eye patch and Hawaiian.
His Bermuda shorts and eye patch. He opens the door. And then Gabriel floats down from the heavens. The angels are singing, and he escorts him into the coffee shop. The world stops turning, and then there's a spotlight over Miss T, a spotlight over Malachi Wolf.
And then
slowly their eyes meet. And there's romantic music, of course, as the angels are singing, and they just slowly come together, and it's very romantic. It is perfect, and I ship it so fucking hard. It was great, because then he's like, hello, my love person, we're going out, and she's like, yeah, we are, and Sydney's this whole time is like, what the fuck just happened? And then she texts Adrian, and she's like, she does what we all would do, and she's like, bitch, you're never gonna fucking believe this. This bitch just asked this bitch out. And then Adrian texts back. He literally just texts back, ... And I'm like, what a mood, Adrian. And then she's like, and he said yes. And she said yes. And then Adrian's like, oh, you know, and we're all like, I know, but isn't it so cute? And it is. And I love it. I was screeching. I was like, oh my God.
And as far as I'm aware, at the end of the series, they're still together.
They were made for each other. It's perfect.
But it's hilarious. She's a history teacher, and he teaches self-defense, right? And like rambles on about all these stories that didn't happen. And fake wears an eye patch.
They're perfect.
And she was like, I thought I sensed a kindred spirit. And Sydney's like, how is he kindred? And she's like, he's a teacher. I'm a teacher.
Sydney, let it happen. Let true love prevail. I fucking stand this. I stand this so hard.
It's amazing, right?
It is. It was perfect.
Yo, so now that that's done, and we now that we got to witness Miss Terwilliger and Malachi Wolf flirt, which is weird.
It was great.
Amazing. Oh, it's weird in the best way.
It was.
They go back to Miss Terwilliger's classroom with some dirt from the garden bed for Sydney to draw power, because she chose Earth because she's most skilled with using Earth or fire magic, and she didn't want to use fire magic because it's potentially destructive. So they get Earth so she can draw magic from it and try and infuse it into the rocks that she just bought.
Yeah.
To find out what she can substitute Foliai with. So right now she's just working on
so she's playing in the dirt.
And Zoe walks in.
And she's like, why are you playing with dirt?
And Miss Terwilliger's just like, oh, I brought it back from Greece, and I was just showing Sydney.
And then this, like, then this,
Greece.
And goddamn, this turned into a whole fucking thing because Zoe's like, why would you even talk to her about Greece? You can't just talk to humans about Greece. You're like friends with her. You're not even supposed to be friends with people. Why would you even be friends with people? You're like talking to her about things and stuff and things like Greece. Like, ah!
The funniest part is my headphones cut out like as soon as you started that rant. So all I got to witness, I still can't hear anything, by the way.
Oh no!
All I got to witness was you ranting and waving your arms around.
Can you not hear? She can't hear me. She didn't get to hear any of that.
And seeing if it helps.
It was It was a good rant too.
I feel
like, okay, yeah, but I feel like even though you didn't, I feel like even though you didn't hear it, I feel like you still heard it.
Yes.
I feel like you still know exactly what I said, like word for word.
And that's why I let you continue. I'm like, it's fine.
You're like, I know what she's saying.
Okay, so then they leave, and she's like, I need new sneakers. Can we go get me some sneakers? Or what do you guys call sneakers there? Sneakers as well? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. She's like, I need new sneakers. And she's like, okay, well, let's go get you some. I guess we'll do stuff as sisters. And then she's like, I want to learn how to drive. Can't you make, I want to drive. Can you get me a fake license? And she's like, no. And she's like, but I got my permit in Utah. And Sydney's like,
and
yeah,
she's like, bitch, do we look like we're in fucking Utah?
She's like, and Sydney's also just like, you need parental supervision for both. And she's like, well, can't you just give yourself legal guardianship over me, please? Like in terms of their fake identities. And she's like, no, but maybe we can practice driving on private property, and then I'll talk to Dad about maybe getting you a license. And she's like, that'll work. And she's like, oh, and then Cindy's like, oh, but shoot, I have so much other stuff I also need to do. So like, I won't be able to take you driving. Yeah, I won't be able to take you driving all the time. But if you really, really want to learn, maybe you could ask Eddie.
And then Zoe immediately threw up everywhere.
Because Sydney's hoping that if Zoe spends more time with, the others, she'll start to not be like, around them. And Eddie is A, a good driver, B, well, also part two, the only other person she trusts to drive her car. And B, he's probably the most approachable of him, Neil, and Angeline. And she's like, we'll wean her onto Dampiers first, and then we'll try with the Moroi, because Dampiers are at least half human.
Yeah.
So we'll start with Eddie. He's a little lovable, like squishy cheeked. He's a pal. He's a real pal.
He's a bud. Nobody would ever be sexually attracted.
Oh, Eddie's attractive.
Is he?
I think he's cute.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he's cute.
Well, Jill likes him.
And she's a princess.
That's all that matters.
Yes. No, from everything, Eddie has always been cute, but I don't think we got much of an initial description from Eddie, because he started off as Mason's friend, effectively.
Yeah.
So we didn't get a massive description of him, but then most of the time that he's been referred to, especially in this one, is like he has same hair and eye color as Sydney, and he's cute, I think. I never pictured Eddie as ugly. I always pictured him as
I don't really picture anybody as ugly.
Yeah, I always pictured him as more attractive than Mason, but that might be because Mason was a ginge.
Like, because every time that Rose is like, Mason's hot, I'm like...
He's a ginge with ginge freckles.
Yeah,
he had freckles.
So I was always like, I'm just gonna leave that.
I mean, there are attractive gingers, but they're generally not the freckly ones. To me, anyway. I'm a bitch. I'm sorry.
Like I said, I'm just gonna leave that where it is.
They have no souls. It's not my fault.
I'm just gonna leave
I need
that
to not
where
speak
it
words sometimes, I think.
I agree. A little shame. Like, I'm just retweeting everything you just said.
What gingers have no souls.
No, the other part. In this lighting, it's making me look a little bit like a natural ginger. I don't know how I feel about that.
It's okay. You and I both know that it's more pink in color in reality.
Yep.
So that's fine. Moving on. So she agrees that Eddie can teach her how to drive.
Yes.
And then they go and get praline pecan ice cream.
They do.
I don't think that is the best of the flavors that she could have chosen for the ice creams.
No, I don't think it is either, but she's Sydney.
Although it makes sense with Sydney's personality.
It does. I was like, ew, but okay.
I guess.
For Sydney's personality, it made sense. I would have gone for like either cotton candy or like quadruple chocolate, but that's cool.
Yes.
Those are my ice cream flavors of choice.
Yes. And now we're back to Adrian, and he's working on a self-portrait for class.
And it's not going well.
No. Oh, that's
right. It looks like a dumpster fire.
Yeah, in his previous Manic episode as well, he painted like 5 different self-portraits, and then he destroyed all of them. And he's just like, I wish Sydney was here. I wish Sydney was here. I can't wait to see Sydney tonight. And then he gets a phone call from Lissa. And I do love his and Lissa's relationship. Because he's just like, you know, as soon as she starts talking to him, like he even says like, I could hear the smile in her voice, in her just saying hello, Adrian. But she's like, oh, there's been another Strigoi restoration, and you're the closest, so you need to get there now.
And he's like, excuse me.
No, he's not. He's like, okay.
Yeah, he's like, all right.
Because he's disappointed he's not going to get to see Sydney, but he understands how important it is. Because for those of you keeping notes, in book 2, there was a big thing where they were trying to work out how a restored Strigoi is changed, because we discover in the first book that it's restored Strigoi can't be turned again.
Yes.
So he's like, okay, well, we need to get there now to see if there's any immediate changes that are visible. So he gets there. He gets told that it's a pair of sisters. A spirit user named Nina restored her sister Olive. Great naming choice, by the way. And so it also doesn't help that Olive is olive skinned. But he's like, excellent, okay. And Liz is like, okay, do you want to take a DMP with you? And he's like, yes, I'll take Neil. And she's like, Neil, why don't you want Eddie? And Adrian's just like, I'll take Neil. And in his head, he's just like, this, hopefully Jill will admit that she's in love with Eddie in the meantime, please.
Yeah.
So he gets to the airport.
Yeah, he's just like, listen, you haven't been here in the past like 10 months. Go away. Get out. Like, you don't know what's been going on with us. Okay? Shush.
So he gets to the airport and he sees Neil, and next to Neil is Sydney.
Yay! And everybody happy danced. There was a disco ball. It was great.
And he's like, Sage Senior, what on earth are you doing here? And she's like, I needed to make sure that you would actually show up because you're so unreliable, Adrian. You know, because Neil's there and no one knows that they're together, except for Jill. And then they have a look, and then when they're walking, because they also have love phones in this book. They have their love phones.
Oh, I made a note for that. I was like, I'm so surprised that it took them this long to get burner phones, because like in the second book, I'd have been like, the alchemists are gonna fucking look at my phone all the time. Let's get burner phones.
Yeah, so
because I was surprised that like in the last book, she was talking to Marcus about breaking into the alchemist thing on her phone. I was like, get a burner, bitch. What the fuck are you doing?
Yes. So they get their love phones, and Sydney is smart. Every text that she sends Adrian, every text he sends her, she reads or writes and then immediately deletes.
Mm-hmm.
Adrian, not so smart. But those consequences will bite us in the ass later, not right now. So as Sydney's leaving, she texts Adrian saying, love you, and looks over her shoulder, and he looks over his shoulder, and he's like, love you too, boo. And it's cute.
Yeah.
So then he goes to Texas, because that's where they get to go. And he gets there, and Rose is out the front waiting for him, and he's like, oh, how the fuck did her and Dimitri get here so quick? God damn it. So they have a chat. Neil goes in, because he seems really, he's got hero worship for Rose and Dimitri, and Adrian's just like, oh, well, Dimitri's inside, and go on in. And then so him and Rose have a quick chat outside. He realizes that he's fine now with Rose. He doesn't see her, and his heart doesn't rip to shreds. And she's just like, oh, so I figure you want a cigarette before you go in. You know, it's been 3 hours for you. It must have been torture. And he's like, it's been 6 weeks, bitch.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, it has. I was like, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah. And Adrian's like, yep, so let's just focus on business, shall we? Let's go in.
And like, Rose is like,
who are you? Who is this person in front of me?
Yeah, she's like, who are you and what have you done with Adrian? And I'm like, get out of here, Rose. Go away. Go back to your own fucking series.
She's in the last book a lot as well.
I'm like, leave Adrian alone.
Yep, and he walks in and he sees Nina, and Nina's like, oh, Nina's the spirit user. And she's all like exhausted and huddled up, but also then she sees Adrian and she's like, "Get it! No, you are not going near my sister." And he's like, "It's cool, it's cool. I just want to check her aura, okay? Okay, just calm your tits. It's fine." She's like, "Okay." And then he walks in and he's expecting another Dampier, sorry, Moroi, but it's a Dampier. They are half sisters, and we get some backstory later on, but I'll just tell it now. Nina is the older of the two. And then their dad met Olive's mother, and he fell in love with her. And I don't know if he cheated on Nina's mother at first or not, but he left Nina's mother and got with Olive's mother, and they got married. So he and Nina and Olive were raised in the same house. So they're super close, which is why Nina restored her. Yeah. And Olive got turned because she dropped out of Moroi school and just went to normal high school because she didn't want to not be able to protect her father because he wasn't a royal and he wasn't going to get a guardian. And she's like, well, I'll be your guardian. So I have to say fuck you to the Moroi world, and
yeah,
you know, otherwise I'll have to get assigned to someone else. And so Adrian uses his spirit magic and goes all through, like he looks at it, he examines her, and then goes beyond her aura down into the core of her being type thing. And sees some spirit magic, but it's fading away, and he's like, God damn it. And he's like, everyone needs to do exactly as I say it, when I say it, how I say it, immediately. And everyone's like, and then we go to Sydney.
Yep. And then we get like this moment from Sydney where she's like, everybody's actually listening to Adrian. They feel like he's the expert on this. This is good. So yeah, so everybody's like, okay, we're listening to Adrian. Yeah, okay, yeah, sorry.
That's later. That's when they're at the court.
Oh.
Because she's not there.
I got it mixed up.
Yeah, it's just Adrian and Neil in Texas. So then we go to Sydney, and she's all bummed that Adrian is away, and she's in Mr. Williger's classroom again, and there's a knock please sign on the door now.
Mm-hmm.
And she's going through trying to get magic to stick to rocks, and she's not having the best time of it. And then Angeline comes in, and she's like, do you know how I loved this bit. Did you know that it's a lot harder to put organs back in the body than it is to get them out? And Sydney's just like, please tell me you haven't eviscerated anyone.
There's no telling.
And so Angeline left her biology assignment in the classroom and went to get it, but the door was locked. So then she tried to climb in a window and knocked over the two models with the organs that you can pull out and look at thing, and they just went everywhere, and now she's fucked. And Mr. Williger's just like, oh, would you look at that? I just dropped my master key, and your biology teacher is out this afternoon for yoga, so she's not going to be back, and it would be such a shame if my master key just went missing right this moment. I'll see you later, Sydney, by the way. So
go fix it.
So they go to the classroom, and Sydney like pulls out a biology textbook just to make sure she's putting everything back correctly. Just like, if it fits, it sits, Sydney.
Yeah.
And then Trey walks in, and he's just like, because Sydney's working on the male one, and he's just like, wow, you really do need all the help you can get, don't you, Sydney? And she's like, well, if you're such an expert on the anatomy of the opposite sex, you do that one then. And he's like, challenge accepted. Walks in and sees Angeline, and he's like, oh, you're here. And she's like, oh, you're here. And he's like, yes, hello. And she's like, hello. And it's awkward and it's weird because they still have the hots for each other, but they don't. And then she's just like,
totally don't.
Yeah, and then Angeline's just like, I had an accident. It wasn't my fault, but in that really annoying voice that he has. And he's like, of course it's not your fault. You're just fucking trouble. And she's like, you got a problem with that? And he's like, no, I don't. And then he's like, oh, fuck, I'm flirting with the damn pig. God damn it, Trey. Stop it.
Poor Trey.
So then they put it all back together, and she gets her homework, and they leave. And then Sydney goes, and then Angeline's like, if only he wasn't a warrior. And she's like, well, he's not currently a warrior. And she's like, yeah, but he wants to be one again. And it's a thing. And then Sydney goes back to her room, and Zoe's reading Henry III. And she's like, I have to pick a Shakespeare. And this one is awful. And she's like, yeah, don't pick the shortest one. Pick the easiest one, or the one most suited to you. And that is obviously A Midsummer Night's Dream, you dipshit. Not Henry III. So we'll do that, okay? Okay, but it's time to go to Clarence's. And then Zoe's like, oh, Dad's coming next week. And she's like, what? And she's like, yeah, so he's here to talk to us about the trial and tell us what we need to do. And then we can finally fight for him, and then we'll be free from Mom. And
Sydney's like in a fucking panic, and she's like, I thought you'd be so happy. And Sydney's like, no.
Yeah, and Zoe's like, I just don't know why Mom is doing this. And she's like, it's because she loves you. And she's like, it's no love. She's ruining my life. And Sydney's just like, oh yeah, no, like, Mom might not have, educated us, but remember the time she broke your foot, okay? And you were gonna miss your gymnastics finals party, celebration thing, and she made them all come to the hospital to have a party with you there. Remember that, Zoe? And all Dad said was, this just shows that gymnastics is pointless, you dipshit. Mom loves us. Okay.
Yep.
So then they go to Clarence's, and one of the things that they do on the love phones is they text each other escape plans and just give them random numbers. And so Adrian texts her an escape plan that involves them opening a ranch in Texas, and Sydney wearing nothing but sexy cowgirl outfits. And Sydney's just like, fuck's sake, delete. So they're all chatting and Clarence is in a good mood and chatting about shit. And then Clarence mentions Shakespeare, and Zoe like actually participates in conversation because of that. And she's like, don't mention his name. How dare you? And they're like, what? And Clarence is just like, why? Why would I not mention him? And she's like, I have to do a assignment and I need to pick a thing and I don't have a book. And he's like, just use one of my books. I have them. I have all of the Shakespeare. So, yeah. So
she doesn't want to touch a book that's been touched by a vampire. And so
she doesn't want to go into his garage on her own. So Sydney's like, I'll go with you.
Yeah.
And then they find the Shakespeare box. And Zoe's looking through it. And then Sydney finds a bag of rock salt. And she's like, oh, this could be what I'm looking for.
Yep.
I'm an idiot. It's so common that I didn't even think of it. God damn it. So then she like steals a handful of the salt and she goes and hides behind a stack of boxes and charms the salt. And she's like, I'm pretty sure this worked. I think it worked. Miss T, can you come and meet me at my dorm tonight? I think I did it. And she's like, of course I'll be there. So then she finds the book. They go back, like dinner's over, they go back to school and Miss T comes to her dorm room and she hands us just some random history book and the bag of salt. And Mr. Williger's like, well, you did it. And that's how it ends.
Yep.
And now we're back to Adrian. He's bossing everyone around. He's like, I need a doctor to get the blood. I need silver rings. I need a vial. I need this. I need that. So everyone's just like yeets to get him what he wants. And what he does is the blood gets drawn into, the blood drawy vial thing. And he needs silver rings. He enchants the rings to encase the vial and slips them all down the vial. And they're kind of working as like a magical barrier to stop the spirit magic leaking out of the blood so they can examine it. Because it's fading away really quick. Nina flirts with Adrian, and because, no one knows he's with Sydney, he flirts a bit back, but for him, it's just like keeping up appearances, whereas Nina seems to actually be genuinely flirting with him. He's also started to hear the voice of his dead aunt whenever he's a spirit.
Of the Queen Tatiana.
Yes. And he had to use a lot of spirit to find the spirit magic in Olive's blood, and then also to enchant the rings and everything. So he ends up falling asleep because he's exhausted. He wakes up and Rose is there and she's like, have some food. And he's like, where are the others? And they're like, oh, they've all gone. Like, it's just you, me, and Neil now. Olive and Nina have gone back to court. I just wanted to stick around and make sure you're okay. And then he's like, well, that was nice of you. I better head back. So they go to the airport. Rose goes to Pennsylvania. Him and Neil go back to Palm Springs. And he gets a text from Sydney, and she's like, I did the charm. And he's like, I didn't doubt it. I did what I needed to do too. And she's like, excellent. When do you get back? He's like, early evening, come celebrate. And he's like, okay. And she's like, get your bed ready. Fuck. She's actually getting better at being a normal girl in a relationship. She's like, get your bed ready. And he's like, wear your black bra. And she's like, I wasn't planning on wearing a bra, Adrian. He's like, God help me. Direct quote, by the way. And Neil has the hots for Olive, the restored Strigoi. So he's like, I kind of hope I get to see Olive again. I hope she'll be okay. And then Adrian gets manic and decides he's going to make Sydney creme brulee. And so then he has to go and buy literally everything you need to make creme brulee, like all of the equipment and ingredients. And he goes to buy it all, and he doesn't have the money to, and then he gets depressed. So he kind of just had to leave everything there, and then whatever. And then he realizes that just how short on money he is, and Sydney's birthday's coming up, and he can't afford to buy her anything. And then Aunt Tatiana's ghost starts speaking into his head. Not actual ghost, he's hallucinating. And she's like, you know, what's wrong, Adrian? Just use the rubies in the cufflinks that I got you. Just pawn them off, Adrian. Pawn them off. And he's like, okay, I will. So he went and pawned one of the rubies in the cufflinks she gave him. And then Sydney has to cancel because Zoe wouldn't let her go, pretty much. And then he goes out drinking and gets very, very drunk. And now it's Sydney's chapter. Jill comes and wakes her up just as she's starting to drift off to sleep. And Jill starts going like, I'm really hungry. I need to go to Clarence's. And everyone in this building is just smells so yummy. And if I don't get blood soon, I'm going to eat someone. And Sydney's like, why the fuck is Jill behaving this way? And Zoe's just like horrified. And she's like, okay, I will take Jill to Clarence's. You stay here, Zoe. And she's like, shouldn't I go with you? And she's like, someone responsible needs to be here, Zoe, okay? And I can't trust any of the others, so it has to be you. She's like, well, that makes sense, okay. Don't get eaten. Don't let Jill eat you on the way to Clarence's, though. And she's like, okay, I won't. It's cool. It's cool. And then they leave the room, and she's like, Jill, what the fuck?
Yeah.
He was just starting to maybe warm up to you guys a teensy weeny bit, and then you do this shit. What's wrong with you? And she's like, it's Adrian. The bond numbed out when he started doing Jaeger shots half an hour ago. So he's like, well, fuck. So
yep.
Sydney leaves the school. She gets Miss Terwilliger to give her permission. She goes to find Adrian. Adrian is she goes to a bar. He's not there, but she runs into Rowena. Rowena is like, I'm sorry, I didn't know Adrian was an alcoholic. I didn't realize he had a problem. I'm really sorry. And she's like, it's fine. She's like, do you know where he went? And she's just like, he said he went to unpawn something, and then he got a cab to his place. She's like, okay, I can work with that. So then she finds the pawn shop. Adrian's there screaming, I need it back. You stole my shit. I'll just give it back, and I'll give you the money in 2 weeks, I promise. You have no right to it. And Cindy's just like, what the fuck is wrong with him?
Yeah.
And she's like, look, how much does he owe you? And they're like, this much. And she's like, okay. So she went and got the money and paid, and he got the ruby back. And he's just real. This is drunk Adrian is pretty much the closest to OG Adrian voice that we get to.
Yeah.
I think. And so she takes him back to his place. She's freaking out. He's freaking out. And then he's just babbling shit, and she's just like, wow, he's really going insane. And she's terrified. And does anything of actual consequence other than the fact that she's freaking out happen?
This is when she cries.
That's right. She bursts into tears, and he's like, what's wrong? And she's like, I'm worried about you. She's like, I have to go. Okay, I can't be here anymore. Bye. And so, and then Adrian is feeling really, really fucking guilty and bad, and he hates that he made Sydney cry. He's decided he's going to try pills. He talks to Jill about it first, and Jill's like, look, if that's what you want to do, go and try it, you know. So he makes an appointment. Oh, that's right. While he's talking to Jill about it all, before he does anything, Sydney and Zoe come out, and Sydney's acting the normal level of cold she is towards him when Zoe's around, but she's also a bit awkward, and he's feeling bad and all that stuff. And they're like, we have to go to the office supply store. And he's like, well, I'm a starving artist. Buy me stuff. And she's like, fuck no. And then she's like, oh, Zoe, I left something back there. I have to go and talk to Jill. Bye. And she comes back and she tells Adrian that she got it and that she did the salt and she got all of the elements in it. And then she's like, I just need vampire blood to replicate the original ink, because that's the other issue now. They need to be able to replicate the alchemist ink to see if it works. And they need vampire blood. And Adrian's like, I'm sure Abe would help with that. And she's like, oh yeah, sure, like, you know, that'll be fun. And then and then Adrian goes to the psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And the psychiatrist is like, well, we need to talk to you before I just give you any antidepressants. And he's like, but why? You're a psychiatrist. I'm supposed to just say I depress you and then you give me pills. And they're like, no, that's not how this works. So then they talk and psychiatrist is just like, you're not depressed. You are bipolar. So you're going to have mood stabilizers. And Adrian's like, will that kill my moods? I'm an artist, all this crap. And they're like, no, it's just going to make you normal, okay?
My first thought was like, yep.
Yep, it will kill your creativity. This is why so many artistic/creative people that are bipolar remain unmedicated. Because they likely will fuck up your creativity.
And that's the tea.
Mm-hmm. But Adrian had an interesting thought in this as well. He was like, maybe we're not insane because of spirit. Maybe we have affinities with spirit because we're insane. Like maybe that's what draws that to us. We have mental instability. And I'm like, well, that's an interesting perspective, Adrian, you know. But so then Adrian pours out all of his alcohol, gets his prescription, and then decides to do it. And that's it. So now we're back to Sydney. And Dad's in Palm Springs, and Sydney's freaking out. When the fuck's he getting here? And she's like, tonight he wants to have dinner. And she's like, God damn it. And Zoe's confused why Sydney isn't ecstatic that Daddy's there. And then I guess just to try and break the tension, Angeline's just like, hey, Neil, have you ever staked a strigoi? And he's like, not a real one. And then she's like, well, maybe you can teach me, you know, the methods that you've been taught. And Eddie's like, I've already taught you. And she's like, it doesn't help to have the second perspective, Eddie. Okay? Like, fuck's sake. So Angeline's arranged to have more time with Neil to try and get over Trey. And then she goes to Miss Terwilliger's room. And she's just like, Miss Terwilliger sees her and she's like, just go, whatever you need to do, just go. And she's like, thank you. And then she goes to Adrian's place, and all of his paintings, like all of his self-portrait attempts, are cut up everywhere, all over the apartment. And she's like, did you hate them all this much? He's like, no, they're all me. So I'm going to combine them. And that's going to be my self-portrait. And she's like, okay, that makes sense. And what is happening now? He can tell something's wrong. She's freaking out about Daddy coming for a visit. And does anything actually happen in this scene?
I don't really think so. I don't really remember it.
They're talking about the charms again, the fact that she's done that. Oh, that's right. She's asking if he can call Marcus tonight, effectively in the dream world. And he's being a bit invasive and stuff, and but he's like, yeah, sure, I will, but he's being weird. And then she goes back to class, and Zoe's already there waiting for her, and she's like, Dad's here now, we have to go meet him immediately. And she's like, I thought he wasn't coming to dinner. And she's like, he got here early and he doesn't want to waste time. It's Dad, we have to go, bye. So they go and meet him at a sushi restaurant, and God, he's a jerk.
Yeah, he's a dick.
But first he gets handed the dinner menu, and he's like, I want the lunch menu. And they're like, but it's 4:30 and lunch ended at 3. And he's like, well, what time is it now? Do you really think it's dinner time now at 4:30? And they're like, no, it's not really any time. And he's like, well, get me the lunch menu. God damn it, I am not paying dinner prices because of your incompetence. And they're like, and then Sydney orders a small plate of sushi, and he's just like, that's a small plate. And she's like, well, it's the cheapest and I get free food at school, so that's fine. And he's like, well, that's good, you're also putting on weight, so you might want to drop a few pounds when she's a size 4. And so then then we see Zoe's face drop as well. She picks the menu back up because Sydney knew she was going to order something deep fried, and then she got sushi as well, even though she hates sushi. And then he's just like, Dad's like, okay, game plan. We're going to make out your mother to be incompetent. She's flaky. She has never held a full-time job. She doesn't do this. She doesn't do that, blah, blah, blah. And Sydney's just like, she didn't have a full-time job because he was taking care of us. And then he's like, oh, also, here's a photo of her and her yoga instructor having a chat outside class. We're going to say she had an affair, okay? And Sydney's just like, wow, you are unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so he's just like, whatever you want me to do, Daddy, I will say, because I love you. Also, Sydney hangs out with the Mariah and Dampiers and her history teacher a lot.
And they talked about Greeks. And the dirt.
Yeah.
And airplanes.
And then Sydney has to kind of stay in your lane, Zoe, in front of their father, which upsets their relationship even more. But she's just like, look, me having such a good relationship with my teacher and all of my and being such a good student gives me a lot of freedom that none of the rest of you have. Because I'm such good friends with her, if I need to run errands, she will cover for me and say I'm doing stuff for her. You need to look at the big picture, Zoe, okay? You're not as experienced as me, okay? So you don't understand that sometimes it's not about the immediate inconvenience, it's about the big picture. Now I can take any of you off campus at whatever time of day I want because of the relationships that I've cultivated here. So stay in your lane, Zoe. And it's all in front of the dad, so then Zoe gets really upset. And the father is delighted that the girls are
mad at each other, yeah.
Yes. And then on the way back to try and then we meet Keith. Oh, we see Keith again. He's like, oh, Keith's out of re-education. Let's video chat him.
Oh, that was...
And poor Keith. He's... Never thought I'd say that, but poor Keith, he is.
Well, you really see the compulsion in the tattoo because they in re-education they re-ink your tattoo and they dump a lot more compulsion into it. So Keith is just like, yes, your mission is my mission. I must not fuck up. I must not do the fucked up. I must not do the fucked up.
I am ready to have the darkness purged. I'm ready to have the darkness purged. And she's like, and Sydney's just like, you sound like you're actually legitimately sorry. That's good, right? And he's like, and his only response is again to say, I'm ready to have the darkness purged.
It was like,
yeah. And then so Sydney's just like, well, fuck.
And that's when she's like, we have to get these things fixed because
yeah. And she's like, I have to make the ink and I have to inject myself with it. There's no other way. So she,
well, because she's worried that like if they ever found out and they ever did that to her, like even if the tattoo was sealed, like even though her tattoo was broken, if they ever got her and re-inked her,
yep,
like forcibly, then she might be so brainwashed and so compelled that she might never be able to do human magic again.
yeah. And she wants to make sure that, yeah, like there's no chance of any re-inking taking. So after dinner, Zoe's off at a study group, and she was going to go to Mr. Williger's house. And she runs into Trey, and Trey's like, "Hey, Angeline's been hanging out with that other Dampier, and there's something going on." And she's like, and Sydney's like, there's nothing going on with them. And he's like, "Well, then why are they always together?" And she's like, "They're just practicing stuff." And he's like, and ultimately it comes down, like the conversation comes down to him saying, "Can you just keep her away from other guys while I try and sort out whether or not I'm willing to risk my entire life to be with Angeline?"
Oh my god.
And Sydney,
everybody in these books just needs to have sex. Good fucking god.
I know, right? And Sydney's just like, "Well, look, Neil's actually interested in Olive. Like, this is all internally." She's like, "But yeah, sure, Trey. Of course I will keep Angeline away from Neil."
Bye. And he's like, "Oh my god, how nice of you, except it's not, you fucking alchemist. What do you want in return?" And she's like, "I hate this because I would have done it for free, but also I do need something from you. Hey, can I tattoo you?" And he's like, "Madam."
And she's like, "It's really, really important, please." And like he trusts her, and he's like, "Fine," you know.
He's like, "Fine."
And he's like, because I think the thing that really convinced him was she's like, "If you come, you'll get to meet Mr. Williger's new boyfriend."
And he was like, he was like, "She's getting dick? Oh my god." And I'm like, yeah, she's getting dick. How is Mr. Williger like the only person getting dick at this point in the book?
Yeah, and then she calls Adrian, and she's like, "You need to get to Miss T's right now." And he's like, "Why?" And she's like, "Because I found a guinea pig." Poor Trey, he's a guinea pig. So now we're over to Adrian. We're at Mr. Williger's, or Jackie's, as he calls her. And Trey and Sydney are there, and Sydney's made the ink shit. And she's like, "Okay, no, we have to do this now." And Adrian's like, "Well, like, you seem a lot more gung-ho on this than you did this morning. Why?" And she's like, "I told him about Keith." And she's like, "This isn't going to happen to me. I refuse." And he's like, "Okay, I absolutely understand. And we are going to do this."
Mm-hmm.
So then Wolf rocks up because he has a tattooing kit that they need.
Because of course he does.
And the cover story is, because obviously he has no idea about magic or vampires or alchemists or any of it. And only Sydney and Adrian are the only two that understand the full scope. Mr. Williger doesn't actually fully understand what Sydney's doing with the magic salt, but she's like, "I trust you, Sydney," you know.
She's like, "Whatever."
Yep. So the cover story for Wolf is, because Trey's got the tattoo on his back of the sun. And so what she's having Wolf do is tattoo over the sun with this clearing, because it's made from salt instead of the other shit. So it's not blue, it's clear. Yay! So it's a lot more subtle. People don't have to go walking around with indigo tattoos on their face now.
That means the alchemist won't be able to see it when you tattoo over your golden lily.
Yep, until your golden lily starts to turn silver.
Yeah.
But that takes, I think he said it takes over a year for it to start turning colors. But she's like, "Oh, it's this new stuff, that ink stuff that actually dissolves the previous ink and will remove his tattoo. And his parents are coming and they can't see it." And he's like, "Do you spend a lot of time topless around your parents, boy?" And he's like, "We're going to go to the beach, okay?" So Wolf tattooed over the sun with the invisible ink.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's got the magic, like the human magic ink in him now. And sorry, I had to laugh at this. Because Wolf was just like, saw Trey's triceps and he's like, wow, boy, what sports do you play? And he's like, all of them. And he's like, oh yeah, have you ever done speed skating, javelin throwing? And it was about to start a story. So Sydney's just like, we don't have time for this shit. Let's go.
Yeah.
So that all happened, and I think that's all that happened in this scene.
Yep.
Oh no, then it's Spirit Dream with Marcus time.
Yes.
So then Marcus she's like, I'm pretty sure I did it. I just need to get some alchemist ink just to double check. And he's like, cool. I'll see you in El Paso this week then. And she's like, okay.
And what's important about this one is that, like, because Adrian's on the drugs, so the spirit stuff is kind of fading. And so he's on a call, on a spirit call, and he's like, they're like, okay, got to make it snappy. But at this point, Sydney doesn't know that this is happening. So Adrian's like,
I'm just then really tired.
Yeah. So he's like, oh God. And so then, like, the conversation with Marcus is done. And then he's like, all right, bye, Sydney. Bye. I love you. Ah! And Sydney's like, all right, bye.
Yeah. And then this is where Jill calls Adrian the next morning. And she's like,
bitch, where the fuck is the bond? And he's like, funny story.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, before that happens, Lissa calls and was like, Adrian, we need you to come, you and Sydney to come to court for like about the
bitch.
About the blood shit that you did before, because we want you there because you're a spirit user and you were on the scene, and we want Sydney there because, alchemists are really good at binding tattoos and stuff. So we're thinking maybe if we inject ink into someone type thing, or the blood into someone, maybe that'll help. And he's like, okay, we'll bring Neil with us again, keep him as far away from Jill as possible. And he'll be happy to see Olive again, so yay. And then Jill calls Adrian.
Everybody just needs to get together. This is ridiculous.
I know. Then Jill calls
I've never
Adrian.
seen, like, a larger group of people that just need to, like, get over themselves and start doing sex.
Well, then Jill calls Adrian and she's like, I had to hear about this from Neil. And he's like, I know, but it'll only be for a few days. And she's like, no, I had to hear from Neil.
Yeah, she's like, I didn't hear it in your head, you dumb fuck. And he's like, oh, yeah, by the way, I'm on pills. And she's like, oh, my God, Adrian, how could you? And he's like, I want to yeet myself off a bridge, bitch. And she's like, that's fair, I guess. But, like, And he's like, but I can get laid now. And she's like, fair.
And now we're back to Sydney. And Zoe's like, don't die at court. And she's like, I won't die at court. And she's like, yeah, but don't die at court. And she's like, okay. So they're going to court. So Sydney, Adrian, and Neil, and Zoe being all responsible. She's like, I'll make sure they get dinner at Clarence's and that Angeline doesn't do anything too crazy. And then Zoe is also starting to get soft spot for Angelina of all people.
Yes.
She's like, I'll make sure Angeline doesn't do anything crazy. Oh my God, did you know that she threatened to sue the school for misrepresentation because the war of whatever ended in this year and not this year?
It's not how that works.
So Zoe's starting to warm up to them, which is nice.
Yeah.
But then, so then Adrian, Sydney, and Neil go to Pennsylvania, and Sydney's just like, you didn't bring a warmer coat, and he's like, it's my prettiest coat, it's my most attractive coat, it's my favorite coat. And she's like, you're gonna freeze, and he's like, I'll be fine, Sage. We're cool. And then we get to Pennsylvania, and it's midwinter in Pennsylvania, and he's fucking freezing, but he just sucks it up because he was like, I don't need a coat as long as I look fabulous.
What a mood. That is like a mood of every girl who has ever gone out during winter. Who needs a coat? I just need to look good. You get out and you're like, and you're like, but at least I'm pretty.
Only this time it's Adrian.
But I'm fucking cold. And then you're just in your stupid heels, like trying to like yeet to the fucking indoors.
Yeah.
And then all your guy friends are looking at you like you're fucking crazy, and you're like, shut up.
Yeah, and Adrian is like doing like the subtle touching of Sydney's leg on the plane because Neil's right next to him, so he's just sitting in a way that his hand is constantly just rubbing against the leg, but no one can see it. And so like Sydney, like, and especially because Sydney hasn't had sex yet, so there's all that free sex tension there as well. She's about ready to slide off the seat at this point.
Yes, she is. Poor Sydney.
And then Neil's just like, Olive and I have been emailing. Is there any chance, do you believe, if I could see her while we're at court?
And they're like, well, she's at court, you're at court, probably.
Yes, and the guardians there aren't, following their charges around 24/7 because it's, court. So yes, I'm sure you will get plenty of time to see Olive.
And he's like, excellent.
And like, Adrian's like, excellent, and everyone's like, excellent.
Yeah.
So they get there, and they're like, it's time to go to the palace now. And Sydney's like, the palace? And Adrian's just like, it's just what they call where the queen lives. It just looks like an academic building. It's fine. But Sydney walks in, and he's like, this does not look like an academic building. This looks like a palace. What's wrong with you? But then they go to the media room, and they're all like dressed up in like school sweatshirts and shit, watching a football game.
Yeah.
And Sydney's ready for bed because it's, nighttime.
Yeah. But all the vampires are like, woohoo, let's get to work.
Let's go.
And he's like, oh God, I'm so tired. And they're like, hey, Adrian. And then I've never been more annoyed with Rose's existence in my life. I'm like, get out.
Yeah, because then they're like, oh crap, Sydney, yes, no, you need to sleep. So like, and Adrian's like, I need to sleep too. I'm on a human schedule. And they're like, okay, well, let's take you to your rooms. Adrian, you're on second floor. Sydney, do you want to be second or first floor? What is best for you? And she's like, I would feel safest on the second floor, please.
Yeah, she's like, I would feel safe. And Rose is like, okay, I'll get you away from Adrian because I'm sure you feel awful about him. And she's like, oh yeah, for sure.
I'm so sorry that you're stuck spending all this time with Adrian.
And she's like, yeah, I hate the Maroy still. For sure, Rose. And Rose is like, yes, because I still know everything. I'm still in the loop. And she's like, yeah, you are totally still in the loop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And honestly, like as the reader, it's a little bit, and just because like you're still like a little salty about like how things ended with Rose and Adrian. It's like really satisfying to know that Rose is that hard out of the loop. You're like, fuck off.
Yeah.
You're like, so don't know anything.
Yeah. So then Adrian rocks up at Sydney's door and he's like, hello, lover. And she's like, hello, lover. So he comes in and she's like, I think I might be ready to have sex. And he's like, well, you know what? We'll just wait. Like, I want to make sure you actually are like legit ready.
Yeah, if there's an I think in front of that, we're not going to do it. And I'm like, who's a good boy?
Yeah. So they just sleep together.
It's cute.
And we saw Christian briefly in this book as well. It was sad because I wanted to see more of it. I love Christian.
I do too.
We don't get enough Christian in Bloodlines. That's the biggest negative to it.
Yeah. Because like I'm not really that interested in like Dimitri and Rose anymore. Yeah. I'm like I don't want to see you guys because like we're so with like Sydney and Adrian and when I'm with them, I don't want to see Dimitri and Rose. I'm like, go away.
But you're not gonna like the last book too much. Thanks, they're in it a lot.
I'm like, no, get out.
Also at this stage as well, we've established that Neil is going to be tattooed with Olive's ink because they have the same blood type. Because Rose is like, I need to do it because I'm the one. I'm definitely the one.
She's like, I'm the strong boy.
Yeah, wait, sorry, they're not the same blood type. Olive's O positive, Rose is B negative, and Neil's A positive. So because Olive and Neil are positive blood types, it's it's not good when you're a negative to have positive blood put into your body. It's not good. It's a mess.
Right.
So Sydney's like, well, obviously, like, you know, Olive can safely donate to all positives, so we'll do Neil then because he's positive too.
Because he's A positive?
Yeah.
Yeah, so O is
neutral.
Is the universal donor.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am universal donor.
Yep.
I'm O negative. Also, just side note, okay, time for more relationship advice. If you're a woman and you're a negative blood type, if you can avoid breeding with a positive blood type, you will save yourself needles. Because when you're a negative blood type, your partner is a positive blood type, there's a 50-50 shot, your baby's going to be positive of whatever. And that can kill you. So the first baby, not too bad. Second baby, that's where it can start to make you sick. You can lose the baby, all that stuff. And so you have to get anti-D needles before and after birth of child. So you will save yourself multiple needles if you breed with another negative.
Henry VIII. That was the whole problem.
Fucking Henry.
That's why he murdered everybody. He was like, why I get no boys? And it's like, because your boys murder your wives.
Yes.
And that's why they miscarried, all the boys. Oh, that's also the thing, is like, if you have boys, they kill you.
Yep. So Adrian and Sydney snuggled all night, and it was glorious, apparently. And then we get like a few paragraphs of how amazing and beautiful Sydney is. And now it's time to go to the lab for the tattooing of the nail. And they have to be hella quick because as soon as they take the blood out of the vial, the spirits start to escape all over again. And so Sonia, Nina, and Lissa are all like using their spirit magic to try and keep the spirit magic in the blood.
Yes.
And they're like, Adrian, why aren't you helping? And he's just like,
this, I was like, fucking go, Adrian. I was so proud of him. Yeah, I was having a proud mama bear moment because they're like, why Adrian? And he's like, all right, fine, time to fess up. I'm on mood stabilizers. I don't have access to spirit. And they're like, why the fuck would you do that when you know we need you? And he's like, first of all, I already did so much shit for you guys. Back the fuck off. What do you want me to do? You want me to self-medicate with alcohol? You want me to cut myself? You want me to turn Strigoi? And they're like,
fair play. And Sydney's just like, I want to have your babies.
Because they're like shooketh. They're like, holy crap, you can't just say that to me. And he's like, fuck yeah, I can. And I'm like, ooh. I was like, Adrian, yes, I stand. I was so for it. I was like, you put your fucking foot down. Yes. And he was like, what do you want me to do? He was like, you want me to jump off a bridge? Fuck off. The three of you are here. The three of you did it. Bite me. And I was like, yes, sir.
I think, actually, no, I skipped ahead. Sorry, after they wake up, they go and get breakfast and they run into the douchebags. And they're like, Adrian, like, what, like, you know, oh, look at this little human that hasn't had any biting happen to her.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And what do they refer to the thing as? Because she's an alchemist. Oh, dabbling.
Yes.
Because I think Sydney went to do a thing and they're like, look at that neck. It's so untouched. Can you imagine?
Okay, we'll just like go ahead and do this plot real quick just because speed through this. Yeah. So essentially at one point, so what they do is like they take a human and they kind of get her like high on normal drugs. On like normal drugs and like, you know, get her to do and then they bite. And Adrian has like sort of half done this once because he was drunk and a girl was drunk. And this was a long time ago. And Sydney eventually finds this out and she kind of freaks out, but then it's all fine. And that's that subplot. And that's that.
Yeah.
And eventually, like, when that happens, later, that leads to Lissa being like, you have to yeet because you're an alchemist and you're too paranoid. And so since you're freaked out by this, and Sydney's like, she can't be like, no, I'm not. Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Because, like, she gets attacked. And Lissa's like, since you're so freaked out by this, and Sydney can't be like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to tell anybody. Sydney can't say that. So she's like, since you're a snitchy alchemist, you have to leave.
Well, also for her own safety, because she
Yeah.
also doesn't want it to happen again.
Yeah.
So that's the circumstances that they live for. Oh, another thing as well that we established previous to the tattoo actually happening is Abe is like, I can get whatever alchemist tattooing supplies is needed, so tell me what you need. And Sydney's like, well, I'll need this, this, and this. This is everything that we use in our tattoos. But can we double it just in case I make an error, please, Abe? And then, so then once it's done, she's like, I'm going to keep all this. Oh, also, Abe, can I have some of your blood that's enchanted for compulsion, like the same as alchemist? And he's like,
why?
You don't need. He's like, you don't need this. And she's and effectively she's just like, look, I'm doing the thing. And he ends up just being like, okay, fine. I don't think he actually asked for anything in return, does he?
Well, he was like, she's like, what do you want in return? And he's like, you've already told me, and like the information you've already given me is what I wanted in return. He's like, I know enough. And you're like, oh God, Abe's power of deduction is like terrifying. Holy shit.
Yep. And then
you're like, Abe knows.
Yep. And then it was after that conversation that she gets attacked.
Yes.
So then they leave court, but then the car breaks down. I can't remember why. Something happens with the car, so then they end up having to wait for a tow truck, and they're freezing to death. And so Sydney's like, enough's enough. So she goes and like uses her magic to start a fire, and Neil sees it and he's like, how did you do that? And she's like, it's a secret, don't tell.
Yeah.
And he's like, of course I won't tell. And then a tow truck comes. He takes them to a B&B, which isn't tacky, a non-tacky B&B.
Yep.
And then Adrian's in his room, Sydney, and he gets a text from Sydney on the love phone saying, check under the door. And there's a key for her room. And he walks in and she's just straight up naked on the bed.
And then they do fuck.
And
that is that. And then they basically fuck like rabbits for like 3 days.
Because then the next morning, like Lissa and the alchemist and everything are like, we'll get you another car. And Sydney's like, no, I wrecked the car. It's my responsibility to make sure it gets back to the rental place safely.
Mostly because she wants to fuck like rabbits for 3 days.
Yes.
And fair.
So,
fair.
Yes. She's making up for lost time, direct quote. So they do lots and lots and lots of fuck.
Okay, and later we're just gonna say this now. At some point, Sydney, when they get back, starts doing sex research and reading books. And we literally direct quote from the book, where did you learn that, Sage? And I was like,
somehow I think that has something to do with the sex in a more oral variety. That's what. Because I'm just thinking there's not a lot of things that she could have worked out in terms of actual sex that would have had him.
I was just like, all right.
I genuinely suspect that had something to do with mouth. So Sydney's becoming a dirty little whore. And you know what? They're cute.
It's fine.
Yes, it's fine. So they get back to Palm Springs. So he's like, Sydney, I missed you. Things were great while you were gone. There were no issues, and then he let me drive, and like he let me drive on the freeway, and this and that, and rah rah. And she's like,
and Angelina was like, great, blah, 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 blah. And Sydney's like,
And she's like, oh my God, did you know that Sydney's never had praline ice cream before? You should have seen her face. It was so funny.
And she's like, oh my God. Okay. She was like, so everybody had a good time while I was off fucking like a rabbit.
Yeah. And then like, so how was it? And they're like, well, they injected Olive's blood into Neil in the hopes that it'll protect him from ever becoming a Strigoi. They're like, awesome. So then and then because Valentine's Day dance is coming up soon, so I guess it's been like almost like it's been at least a month since Zoe got there, because she got there just before Christmas, and now Valentine's Day dance is impending, so a bit over a month now.
Yeah.
And they're all just like, this sucks, because like we're all either single or not in relationships we can openly acknowledge. So they're like, instead of the dance, let's go to the movies. So they decide to do that, and Zoe's keen for that as well. And it's like, okay, then that's cool.
Yeah.
And now Sydney has what she needs.
Real quick, just because I want to acknowledge this, like, because we just got asked what type of genres we read, and I said mostly urban fantasy and high fantasy. And I thought it was romance. The romantic subplot in this book is, at least in this book in this series, is very at the forefront. And it's not always like that in this series, but in this book, it's very much the focus. Although Bad Book Week, right now we are doing a contemporary romance, and that has been a clusterfuck.
Yes.
That's been a clusterfuck. So that's been fun. Anyway. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and link the website.
Okay.
I haven't done that. Just continue.
So now that Sydney has the stuff of the alchemist thing, she's like, okay, well, we need to do the thing again. She's like, but we can't have wolf tattoo Trey, because that would completely ruin our cover story. So they convinced, they had Mr. Willett to convince him to leave his tattooing equipment there, just in case they needed to redo the Dissolve tattoo.
Yeah.
And Trey's like, you're gonna be tattooing me now, and she's like,
it'll be fine.
How am I scarier than a one-eyed man?
And he's like, have you ever fucking tattooed anything before? And she's like, no, and I'm not artistic at all, but that's not the fucking point. Like, and he's like,
yep. So ultimately what she ends up doing is, just because from her understanding, the two inks need to be in the same place.
Yeah.
Like the counteracting alchemist ink needs to be over the alchemist ink. So she has to then go over his existing tattoo again, but she just did like faint outlines of some of the shapes on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's like, okay, now it's time to see if it'll work. So she did the normal words of, our words are your words, our goals are your goals, our beliefs are your beliefs. And then instead of the normal instructions of you shall not speak of the vampires to anyone who doesn't know type thing, she goes, you're not going to talk to anyone about how you feel about Angeline. And then Trey gets all dazed, and she's like, fuck, it didn't work. And then he's like, wait, why would I talk about Angeline? And she goes, well, do you want to talk about Angeline? And he's like, yeah, she's amazing, I think I love her.
And then she's like,
this is amazing.
Yeah, because she's like, at this one point, Angeline did this one thing, and he's like, yeah, because she doesn't know anything, and she's such an idiot, because she was sheltered her whole life, and it's amazing. She makes me see life in a new way. Oh my God, I want to fuck her forever. And she just goes, yay! And he's like, what? And she's like, it worked! You're in love with Angeline. And he's like, shut up.
Yeah, so it worked.
Yeah. Yay. It was a funny scene as well.
And then so they're like, it's time to do a celebrate, so they decide to do celebrate and they're talking, and Marcus sent word to Adrian via Sabrina that he'd be in town next week. So they're like, excellent. So she's making extra ink whenever she can for him, like the clear ink, not the alchemist ink.
Yeah.
And and they're at Mr. Williger's house, and she's like in the back room making more shit, and he's like, so now that we're alone, and she's like, Mr. Williger's in the next room, and he's like, I locked the door, we're fine. And then they
I was like, this was another part of my notes where I'm screaming. I'm like, oh my God, you guys, stop. She's in the next room, you psychos.
Yeah, wait, sorry, no. They're about to do fuck, and then she gets a text and she goes, I need to check it. What if it's important? He's like, fine. And it's
I was
Neil.
like, good, stop that.
Yeah.
You too.
So it's Neil, and he's like, I need to talk to you privately and urgently. Can we meet tonight?
Yes. So they meet, and Neil is like, I want to like fuck up a stragoi, and she's like, bitch, what the hell? And
he's like, we need to see if the tattoo works, so I need to go be baity bait.
And she's like, mm-mm. And he's like, but you can do a yeet yeet. You can do a, and she's like, you said you wouldn't tell. And he's like, I didn't tell anybody. Then Eddie shows up, and he's like, hey, Eddie, you want to go fight Stragoi? And he's like, but we need other people. It's not like Sydney can do anything. And he's like, no, Sydney can help. Right, Sydney? And she's like, you said you wouldn't tell anybody. And he's like,
well, I didn't.
And he's like, well, I didn't, but you're gonna. And she's like, you fucktard.
And and Neil's just like, it's Eddie. Do you really think Eddie's gonna tell anyone? And she's like, no, you're right. Okay, Eddie, I can do it. She doesn't tell him. She just shows him, and Eddie's like, well, that changes things. I'm in.
Well, but then she does also have the thought to keep a secret if one of them is dead, and I'm like, she's right about that. That's gonna bite her in the ass.
Yep. So then they decide, and now we're back to Adrian, and it's Sydney's birthday. And because Adrian also tells Sydney as well, like a few days before her birthday, so I'm going to make you dinner for your birthday, and then afterwards we're going to have sex in like your favorite place in the world. And she's like, oh, wait, just addressing, vaping is edgy. Have you tried cigarettes? This is how I stopped smoking cigarettes. I literally, that's why I used to spend way too much money on cigarettes, and I switched to vaping because I could buy 3 months of vape juice for less than a carton of cigarettes. So I don't vape to edge. I vape to not smoke. But I'm back now. Sorry.
He's like, we don't vape to be edgy.
Yeah, he's like, we're gonna have sex in the Mustang, and she's like, you ruined the surprise. And he's like, no, because now you get to think for the next few days about how we're gonna have sex in the Mustang. And so like Sydney's about ready to just take me now, Adrian. Then there at the thought. But his car's broken down, it won't start, and so it gets towed. And he's sad, and now he's like, I don't know what the. And then he's with Rowena, and he's like, I need to go buy stuff for dinner, and he buys a frozen lasagna, and she's like, how dare you do this?
And then this is really cute because she gets her girlfriend, and she's like, we're gonna make you dinner. We're gonna help you, you worthless piece of shit. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and she gets there, and Cassie's like, got all the stuff, and she's like, he's like, what are you making? And she's like, well, what the fuck did she make again? Gumbo. She's making gumbo.
Like,
and he's like, I'm making gumbo. And he's like, we're making Sydney soup. And she's like, this is not soup, it is gumbo. How dare you? And so then Sydney rocks up, and they have dinner, and Sydney loves it, and it's great. Sorry, I think before then, he talks to Marcus. Yes, Sydney calls him first. Sorry, Marcus calls him before Sydney gets there, and he's like, I'll meet you here at this time. And he's like, okay, so I text Sydney, and Sydney's like, awesome. And Sydney's just had a massive fight with Jill when she gets there.
Yeah.
And also there's cupcakes. So they
Yeah.
eat the gumbo and then have cupcake, and then he's like, the car's broken down, but we can have sex in your car. So then they go and have sex in his car. And then, because it's YA, and in a lot of YA books, couples have a quote that defines their relationship type thing.
Yeah.
Theirs isn't too bad because they're talking about shit and how like shit can go to hell in a handbasket at any moment type thing. And Adrian quoted something and was like, whatever the poem is, and then he's like, the center cannot hold, and then they look up the poem and Sydney reads the whole thing because it's a World War I poem.
Yeah.
And she looks it up on Adrian's phone, and then they chat, and then she's like, the center will hold, and he's like, how do you know? And she's like, because we are the center. So that becomes their thing to each other is the center will hold. Meaning their love can survive anything, and it's beautiful and it's sweet, and you're not allowed to vomit that, babe.
I'm vomiting that. Real quick, we were just asked what's it like being authors. The dream job, honestly.
I wouldn't know yet because I haven't finished my book. Because every time I start to get motivation, life happens. I was motivated a few weeks ago, but then life happened.
It do be like that sometimes.
Yeah, but part of it actually really fucking sucks. Like the prep work can really fucking suck.
Yes.
Parts of it that's amazing. But like thinking of the idea and like the main character and shit like that can all be like, that's all fun. But then it's like, no, okay, we've got like all the major plot points, but what about the subplots and what like we need to, and it's like also how do we get from A to B because there's gaps in between. So then when you're having to try and work all that out, that can be fun and it can be a nightmare depending on how easily your brain's working that day.
Yep. It's a whole, I'll say this too, it is a whole lot of texting your best friends, just walls of shit, and being like, you're going to listen to me work stuff out as I text you and spam you. I'm so sorry I'm like this. It's a lot of that, but it's worth it.
Yes.
It's hard and it's sometimes mind-numbing, but it's totally worth it.
Yeah.
But there are days when you want to tear your fucking hair out.
Yeah.
And then also there's the logistical business stuff. And sometimes that's fun. Most of the time, that is also mind-numbing and makes you want to tear your fucking hair out.
Yeah. Oh, God. Also, preaching about healthy lifestyle choices it's annoying. Just so you know, Cam Tooney. It's annoying.
Yeah.
Where are we at? Yeah, so they have sex in the car, they do the thing. And then it's back to Sydney. And she's got all the ink and she's like, yay! But she's also worrying about how everything can go to hell in a handbasket, because it can. And Zoe's still mad at her. So she's like, you can go practice doing turns in the car park, okay? And have some cupcakes.
Yeah.
So she does that. And then... Oh, okay. And then it's dinner time and they're all chatting about stuff. But then, like, Sydney, Neil, and Eddie kind of have to yeet, but kind of discreetly type thing. Before Sydney gets to Adrian's place for dinner, Angeline pops by and takes a cupcake.
Yes.
Or wants to take a cupcake. But they end up going to LA to find the Strigoi.
Yes.
And her and Zoe had another big fight before all that began.
Yep.
And then they find the Strigoi, and Neil's like, hey, you, Strigoi. And he's like, I kill you. And he's like, no, turn me. And he's like, bitch, please, I'm hungry. So he starts drinking from Neil, and Sydney's like, oh, fuck, we failed because her and Eddie are hiding. She's like, no, it didn't work. And then the Strigoi steps back. He's like, what's wrong with you? And they're like, excellent, done. Eddie jumps in, Sydney jumps in. They're all fighting. They're all about to die. Like, the Strigoi's got, like, Sydney up against the wall. And then Wild, Angeline, and Trey appear. And so, like, then, like, you know, they fight and they win. And I think the Strigoi, I don't know if the Strigoi dies or gets away. It's not relevant. They beat the Strigoi and he's gone.
Yep.
And then Eddie's just like, what the hell are you doing here? And Sydney's like, they just saved her life. And he's like, not them, her. And they look over and there's Jill. And she's like, I wanted to be a part of it, guys. Come on. And Sydney's like, you shouldn't have. Why would you bring her? And they're like, because she's how we got out. And there was a thing. There was an argument. But they're like, but yay, it worked. Celebrate.
Yeah.
And then they get back. Oh, no, because then Eddie's like, I don't care what they do, Jill. You have no business. You're a princess of your people. You have no business fighting. And she's like, a princess of her people has no right to sit by while they risk their lives. And then she kisses Eddie, and then he's surprised, and then he kisses her back, and they get together, and it's a moment.
Yep.
And so then they go back to school. No, they don't. They don't go back to school because they're out way after curfew. I think so they're like, I don't know how we're getting back into school. They're like, maybe if we just stay out, no one will notice, and then we'll just sneak back in the morning when everyone's awake. And we'll just blend in with the crowd. And Sydney's like, take me to Adrian's. So she goes to Adrian's and spends the night there, and they do fuck. And there's lots of doing fuck in this book.
There really is.
They do have a lot of lost time to make up for, I guess. But because then Sydney tells Adrian what they did because he didn't know. And he's like, you could have died. And she's like, but I didn't. But I almost did. You're right. And it made me realize that I love you even more and this and that. And I just don't want to, you know. And he's like, I get it. And they're like, whatever happens, we'll be together. And, you know, that's that.
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh, also Eddie and Jill did a thing. And he's like, excellent, it's about time. And then they're back at school and Zoe's being weird. And we're back in Adrian's head now. And Alyssa texts Adrian, like, get on your laptop, we need to video chat. And he's like, okay. So then she's like, it worked. Do you know how important you were in this whole process? Yeah, because obviously they've been filled in that Neil couldn't be drank from. Because that was the whole point. And they're like, yay. And she's like, well done. And then she's like, oh, by the way, guess what? I finally got the age of the quorum law thing on the docket type thing. So, like, we should be able to get that fixed soon. And he's like, yay, Jill won't be in danger. Oh, but then we'll have to leave Palm Springs. And Sydney will have to leave Palm Springs. And what are we going to do type thing? But this is all in his head.
Yeah.
But he's glad for Jill. And then he's like, I need to talk to Christian. And Christian's like, hey, what's up? And what did they actually say? I don't know. Why did he want to talk to Christian?
I forget.
Oh, he wanted his bacon meatloaf recipe that he made for Rose in the third book. Remember when she was guarding him?
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
His bacon meatloaf recipe. That's what he wanted.
Okay.
Okay, that's right. And then he got in touch with Jill and they met up and he's like, guess what? And she's like, oh my God, amazing type thing. And he brought her leftover cupcakes. And then they're talking about the kissy with Eddie. And she's all excited that she's going to be able to see her mom, and then she's like, so what's going to happen now though? And he's like, maybe she can go off with Marcus, I don't know, type thing, and I'll go with her. Wherever she goes, I will go with her. And it's cute and it's sweet. And then he goes to meet Marcus that night, because we time jumped to that night. And meets Marcus's people, and they're waiting for Sydney to show up. And she's just not there, and they're getting weird. Like, they start to worry. And then Eddie runs in, and he's all beaten up, and they're like, what's wrong? And then Eddie hands this is really sad. Eddie hands Hopper in rock form over to Adrian, and he just keeps saying, she tricked me, she lied to me, there were too many of them, I had no idea, I'm so sorry, she tricked me, she tricked me. She just kept on saying she tricked me. And first time I read this, I thought it was Zoe that tricked him.
Yeah.
Especially up until the point where Sydney tricks him. I thought he was talking about Zoe. And they're like, what? And Marcus is like, what happened, Adrian? And he's just like, the center didn't hold. And I was like, no. And then we go to Sydney, and it's at the beginning of her day. That day, Zoe's in bed. She's being cross with Zoe. Oh, sorry, she's being cross with Sydney. She gets up, and Zoe's just snapping at her and being a bitch to her. And she's like, I'm really confused, but okay. And then they're talking. Then she talks to Trey about the night before, and Trey's like, fuck it. I love Angeline. I'm going to be with her. I don't care. Whatever happens will happen, but we're going to do a thing. And Sydney's like, well done, you. Thumbs up. And then also at this stage as well, we've established Adrian. I forgot about this. Adrian's lost his phone. He's lost his love phone, and he thinks he must have left it at school somewhere. And we've already established as well that he doesn't delete their texts. So she's still texting she texts his actual phone, and she's like, everything's still on for tonight. And he's like, as far as I know. And they're like, excellent. Then she gets a text from Adrian saying, oh, change of plans, we're meeting here instead. And she's like, that's a weird place, but okay. I need to get stuff. And then she clicks that he's messaging from the love phone. And she's like, oh my God, you found the phone. And he's like, yep. And she's like, I love you. I'll see you soon. And then no answer came. And she's like, this place sounds really dodgy though. I'll get Eddie to come with me because he's already met Marcus before. So her and Eddie are going to the place where they got told to go. And then Eddie's pretty much just like, Sydney's like, so you and Jill? And he's like, yeah, I guess me and Jill type thing. I guess we'll have to try and work it out. And it's really looking like everything's going to work out.
Yeah.
She tricked us. And then he's like, look, that night you went to Adrian's. And she's like, Eddie. And she's like, no, let's not. She's like, let's not talk about this. He's like, no, we need to talk about it. I'm fine about it. Okay. Like, you two are good for each other. Like, if you want to date him, that's none of my business. Like, I don't understand. Like, it doesn't make sense, but you two work, and that's cool.
Yeah.
So people are finding out about her and Adrian, and they're fine with it. And she's just like, sigh of relief. And then ninjas appear. And Eddie's just like, run, Sydney, run. So they start running, and then they hear voice, like there's flashlights everywhere. They hear voices, and then she hears her father's voice and her sister's voice, because her father calls out, Sydney, I know you're here somewhere, whatever. And then he asks someone, that boy, is that him? And she's like, no, that's the other one. And she's like, oh, that's Zoe's voice, God damn it. And then, so they're running and hiding through fields and shit. And then Sydney realizes they're not going to get away. and Eddie will die before he lets them take Sydney.
Yeah.
So she hands him Hopper and says, I need you to go over there and do a spell. You need to say whatever it is in Latin. Just say it, it'll knock them all out, we'll get away, type thing. And Eddie's like, what about you? And she's like, I'm going to hide here, but you need to get over there. You can get over there more stealthily than me.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes, and then as soon as he's out of sight, she just like goes over and she's like, here I am.
Yeah.
And he's like, and Dad's just like, how could you do this? This and that. You said you loved him and blah, blah, blah. And Sydney's like, how the hell did you even know to Zoe? And she's like, I found the phone when I was practicing turns. And there were other things too. And there was the cupcakes. And she's like, what do you mean the cupcakes? And she's like, you said you bought them. But then Angeline started going on about how she saw the same cupcakes at Adrian's place and this and that. And Sydney's just like, really? Really? Googling a poem and cupcakes is how my secret got found out.
Yeah.
And then my favorite thing is like the dad was like, you don't know the sacrifices I'm making for you here. You've got no idea how lucky you are. The darkness has corrupted you. No matter how long or how difficult, we will undo whatever this Moroi boy has done to you. And she's just like, are you sure about that, Dad? Because he's done everything to me. And then Sydney gets knocked unconscious with drugs.
Yeah.
And so then we're back with Adrian, and Eddie looks just traumatized and like he's fucked up. And he's just like, I was there. I was saying that same thing over and over again for like 20 minutes before I realized that she tricked me.
Yeah.
And so they're like, fuck, we need to find her. Marcus is like, I'm going to start calling all of my contacts to see where they would have taken her. Mr. Williger's there. She's freaking the fuck out too. She's like, I'm going to try and use magic to find her. I don't know. Like everyone's just freaking out, and Eddie's just like, I'm so sorry, Adrian. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And Adrian's like, it's not your fault.
She tricked you.
Yeah. Like it's her job to lie convincingly.
Yeah.
She did what she did to save you type thing, and they're freaking out, and they're like, what's going to happen? And they're like, they're going to send her to re-education. And I think, and then they're like, oh, get into Sydney's head with a dream type thing. He's like, I can't, I'm on pills, I can't access my magic at all. And so now he's hating himself for taking meds, and Jill's there now, and it's like everyone's just trying to work out where the fuck Sydney is and how to find her and whatever. And it turns out as well, the thing that she told Eddie to say over and over and over again, like as the spell, was Latin for the center will hold. And it was sweet. And then we go back to Sydney, and she wakes up, she's in a pitch black room, and she's naked. She's freezing cold, and she's like, what's happening? And a voice is talking to her through speakers, and they're like, we're going to save you. You're being reborn into the world, cold and naked, given a new chance to save yourself. And only when you have earned the clothes shall you get the clothes type thing. And then they shine a light on a case embedded in the wall, and inside of it is the cross that Adrian gave her, but they don't know that. They just know that it's a cross and something important to her. And they're like, only when you've earned it shall you get it back. And they're like, we need to make you holy again, and you need to confess. And then they're like, you leave us no choice. And then they knock her unconscious again with drugs, and the book ends.
Yeah. So Sydney's going to be re-educated, but she really can't be. Oh, no, she can be. She hasn't had the tattoo, has she?
No, but she doesn't get re-inked. But also, though, because she is a magic user, that does, I think also that would have protected her regardless.
Yeah.
But she hasn't had the new ink.
Well, yeah, because it's already the first time she got re-inked.
Yeah. but yeah, no. So she ends up getting out of her education without being raped.
She's about to be re-educated. So
yes. So the next book, Sydney is in re-education.
Yeah.
So we get to see inside that.
So just real quick, the next books that we are doing, we are skipping Christmas week. So we're taking Christmas off just because the scheduling got real crazy. So the next,
it's a busy week.
It's a busy week for everybody. So the next book that we are doing, we're going to be doing it on New Year's Day, and also just because of scheduling and stuff like that, because of where we're going to be. We're going old school, and we're doing a morning one and a night one for you because you're in Oz. Yes. So we're doing old school schedule, so it's going to be 7 a.m. Eastern time on New Year's Day. Addie and I are going to be hung over. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. We're going to be dead. But we are going to finish the Gamble Brothers series with Tempting the Bodyguard. So that's going to be awesome. We're going to bring in the new year on a low note. On the not the lowest of notes, but
a pretty low note though.
Pretty low note. And then the next book club we're doing after that is going to be If I Should Die by Amy Plum, which is actually the third book in that series. And what happened was back a long time ago, we read the first two books in the series because as a teenager, these were my favorite books.
And then I rage quit.
And then you rage quit, even though I still like the books. But they are also Addie's favorite books from adolescence because Addie and I are childhood best friends. And, you and I are also best friends, but we were best friends later. So we do not have adolescent favorite books together.
Yes.
But yes, so we decided that we're going to go ahead and finish those books, finish that series anyway, since we already have two of them knocked out. In between now and then, I'm going to go ahead and upload the first two streams that we did. So Die For Me and Until I Die will be up on the Teresa J. Martin YouTube channel, and it'll also be linked on the website and everything by the time we get to January 2nd. So we're doing 2 book clubs, 2 days in a row. So that'll be fun. That'll be a lot. 2 7 a.m. streams. Woohoo.
2 days in a row.
2 days in a row. Hella. And then we will have...
I'm going to be very tired on the 3rd. I'm going to be very, very tired.
Oh, won't we all? But yeah, so we will have another series completed, but we will bring in the new year with 2 series completed, and then the week after that, we will be back with Bloodlines. So that is what's going on there. And yeah, that's all the housekeeping stuff. So we hope you guys have a very Merry Christmas, and